Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. Test 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. Good.
I'm gonna turn to red, which is totally counterintuitive.
Sorry, we're just hopefully solving a small technological issue. We'll be with you very shortly. Thank you for being here. Okay, again, thank you for coming. Please note the board met in executive session to consider matters regarding proposed, pending, or current litigation. We will call the meeting to order and rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will now ask for a motion on approval of the minutes for our meeting of September 2. Is there a motion
Motion.
and a second? Any questions on the minutes? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Betty, can you see Andrea, or is Andrea? Andrea, can you hear us? So Elliot, I think that may be part of the technology issue. So I guess we're going to proceed for right now. We have a quorum, and we'll hopefully get Andrea reconnected very, very quickly. We'll now move on to the report from our superintendent, Dr. Dolan.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. I'm really very pleased to give this report tonight, but before I do, I want to report on a little bit of research that I did today, because I love knowing where words come from, you know, why something is called what it is. So what I learned today is that a blue ribbon comes from the Blue Riband, a prize that was awarded for the fastest crossing of the Atlantic Ocean by passenger ships. And prior from the Cordon Bleu, blue again, which referred to the blue ribbon worn by the French Knightly Order of the Holy Spirit. The spelling changed a couple of times. Pretty soon it became blue ribbon, and then it was soon awarded in county and state fairs. And pretty soon it became it was applied to distinguished members of a group or a commission or a group who have convened to address a problem. The usual usage is Blue Ribbon Commission. And now the phrase blue ribbon is and forever will be associated with North Shore High School. Because as you know, we were awarded the blue ribbon as a national blue ribbon high school this week. Before I proceed any further, I'd like to thank Shelley Newman for all of the work she did this year, getting press releases out quickly and by the way, keeping the secret, which we knew for about 24 hours ahead of time. Thank you so much, Shelley, for getting all this out, and I'm relying in some measure on some of her work. It was on September 21st, 2021, that United States Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, announced that North Shore High School had been named a 2021 National Blue Ribbon School in the exemplary high-performing category. The designation validates and affirms our ongoing exemplary work inside and outside of our classrooms. It speaks to our community's commitment to the whole child and personalized learning experience aligned to our shared values, as reported to us by Mr. Contreras. And now again, I have to pause because Mr. Contreras, the high school principal, is the primary author of this report. Last year during COVID, Mr. Contreras spent hundreds of hours, I am told, preparing this report. And I'll speak in a minute, I know how difficult a report it is. And he completed it and then had to have all the back and forth with Washington on questions that they still had. And he managed this entire process. And near the end of his report, he identified the most important qualities of North Shore High School as inquisitiveness, intellectual engagement, creativity, artistic pursuits, inclusion, and kindness. I thought that was indicative of the kind of person that Mr. Contreras is, as well as an attribute of our school. We were named an exemplary high-performing school, and that means that we have the state's highest high school graduation rates and the highest achieving students, top 15% in English and mathematics, as measured by state assessments. Miguel Cardona, the Secretary of Education, current secretary, indicated that this year's cohort of honorees demonstrate what is possible when committed educators and school leaders create vibrant, welcome, and affirming school cultures. And he too acknowledged, in the face of unprecedented circumstances, North Shore High School found ways to creative ways to engage, care for, protect, and teach our children. Blue Ribbon schools have so much to offer and can serve as a model for other schools and communities that we can truly build back better. I can't say with enough emphasis what a big deal this is, and at risk of sounding immodest, I'm the perfect person to say it because I had nothing to do with it, all right? I can brag on this and how important it is because I'm just the lucky recipient of the email and the letter. I know how much work went into this, and I know how much work went into this because I too completed Blue Ribbon school reports when I was the principal at Cary High School, and we lost in 1997, 1998. And 1999. That was a tough phone call to the superintendent, that last one. That was a tough phone call. But we did win in 2000. We were named a National School of Excellence. And boy, that was an exciting time for us. But the reason I bring that to your attention is because I know how much work goes into this. It is hundreds of hours of writing and researching and refining. I can't give the school enough credit. An absolutely wonderful achievement on the part of the school. I'm so pleased to announce this, and it is truly a feather in the cap of the district and this entire community. Congratulations to North Shore High School. Congratulations to the board. Congratulations to Mr. Contreras. And again, congratulations to this community who won. A couple of other updates, more good news. I have a facilities update that I'm very pleased to report. Glad again that John Hall is here. John, where'd you go? Because John oversaw the repair of our turf field. It's hard to believe, but just 2 weeks ago tonight, I'm pretty sure it was 2 weeks ago tonight or 2 weeks ago last night, I guess, Hurricane Ida, all that rain that we had, and it uplifted the field. It actually got up under the field, lifted it up, and it was like a carpet that was no longer tacked on one side. It's managed by a company called Lantec. They were here on Tuesday, and our teams were back out there on Wednesday. And that's fortuitous because we have a home football game on October the 2nd, and our field will be ready for that again. So thank you very much to John. Thank you to Don Lang for overseeing that. Thanks to the athletes for their forbearance. It's a word I've used a lot this year, for their patience and their willingness to roll with the punches. No one complained because they knew that we were working at it, and I'm so pleased that we got it done. A couple of other updates. Back to school nights have been taking place virtually, and I know that's not ideal, but I'm hearing that they are going very well and parents are participating, and luckily all of the technology is working. And I'd also like to talk about transportation because I learned something today from my colleagues. I speak to other superintendents, and today, in fact, we had a quadrant meeting, and I learned that many of my colleagues are receiving phone calls at 6:30 in the morning from their bus companies with the following message. Dear Mr. Superintendent, the following bus routes will not operate today because they don't have drivers, because many of the companies that are employing drivers can't find people to drive the bus. Now, I don't know if anybody saw in the news a few nights ago, Mo Willems had a suggestion. Thank you, somebody out there. Thank you very much. Mo Willems, who wrote a book called The Pigeon Wants to Drive the Bus. He was actually on the news the other night, and they were thinking about drafting the pigeon to drive a bus. We haven't had to do that because of the foresight that this district had to build a bus garage, to have some mechanics over there, all of whom have their license, to have a dispatcher who has his license, and we've not had to cancel a single route. We've been able to continue with transportation unabated and with no 6:30 phone calls telling me which buses are not going to run. I thank Olivia for that. I thank Michelle Hall, and I congratulate the district again on the foresight to have a bus garage like that that can service the students in the way that they do. I have to do a COVID update. I wish I didn't have to, but I do need to. I'm really happy to report, and the board just got this word tonight. For the third day in a row, we have had 0 student cases. 3 days in a row with no student cases. And I give the students and the staff all the credit for that. I know none of us like the masks. I mean, even today, even just now as I'm speaking, it's very difficult to speak, but we need to do it, and it's paying off. We've had very few cases. I would say low teens, 12, 13 cases total since the beginning of the year. A few staff, Some other students who were quarantined because they were exposed, and that's always difficult to make those judgments, and we do it reluctantly, but we do it out of care for their safety and their health, and it seems to be paying off. I am in buildings a lot. I know that that's the way I collect information best, and I say to people all the time, nothing important happens in my office. I know where the important stuff is going on, and it's in the buildings. And I'm seeing kids wearing masks, and I'm seeing kids do so diligently. And, you know, the occasional kid who's wearing, you know, what we call the chin strap, and it's a little low. As soon as somebody looks and just, you know, pulls it up, you know, signals, you know, do this. Kids are fully compliant. They've done a great job with it. And again, it's paying off. You know, our goal was to open school live. We're live, safe. It appears safe, and we are sustaining it. It is sustainable. So I congratulate the staff for that. The next step in our COVID plan is, as you probably know, the state has mandated that all staff become vaccinated. And we are in the process now of developing a plan, working with our bargaining units that will get everyone either vaccinated, and of course we'll require proof that they are vaccinated, or if they are not vaccinated, we will allow them to be tested, and we're working out a way that they can do that conveniently here on school grounds. And if for some reason they do not want to avail themselves of the testing that we provide, they can bring us testing from an outside third party. We think we'll be able to cover everybody with that. I'd like to thank the Federation for their assistance in developing the plan, and we'll be working with the other bargaining groups next week. And we hope to have that done at the very beginning of October. Near the end, I'd like to extend an invitation to everybody here and anybody who's watching and listening to an event that I'll be hosting on Tuesday, October the 5th at 7 o'clock. Absolutely stole it. I call it D3. You know where I got that, Discussions with Dr. Dolan. And it's not just a conversation. I have an exercise. I don't know, was anybody at the first D3? Okay, so I have an exercise. I think it's interesting. I think it's something you can walk away with. I think it's something you might think about after you leave the room. But it's a way for me to begin to collect some information on where people think the district is and what we can and should be doing. And we're even going to get into what we shouldn't be doing and having a conversation about that. It's painless. I think it's fun. I enjoyed myself. We had some fun, and I will be sharing all that data with the board just as soon as I collect it all. And that's what tonight is about. That's what tonight is about. That's a minor effort, one person's effort on engaging with the community. The board, to its credit, has established a goal for this year. And I do point out that the goals have not yet been adopted, so the language might change a little bit on this one, but it's going to be real close to this. Community outreach with a focus on community engagement. The idea of engaging with the community in conversation, discussing with the community our collective vision of what the district is about. And before we do any of that, one of the things we're going to do is you will be receiving a newsletter that the board has a copy of here tonight, and an electronic version of the survey. We've been asked to do some surveys, and here's one of our first efforts at it, asking you, how do you want to be engaged with? You know, we could make a decision. We could decide board meetings are the best thing since sliced bread, and this is it, and here's your opportunity. But we also know there's other ways to engage with the community, and we're asking you how you would like to engage with us. So that's the purpose of the survey that will be going out. I think you'll have that in your house probably the very beginning of October. I'm looking at Shelley as I say that. I don't want to promise something and find out I was wrong. And that community engagement, one of the 3 goals that the board has identified for this year, is absolutely critical to all of us. And it is also the topic for discussion for tonight for the board. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ludmar to talk a little bit about community engagement. Then I think the board might have some things to say about it. But some of you are here because you got an email from me inviting you, asking you to be here tonight because you had some ideas on community engagement. And I'm asking anybody here who has a thought tonight, or if you have the thought after you leave here tonight, email me, email the board. Anything you email to the board, I get also, and I'm usually the one that responds, and I always respond. Send us your ideas. And over the course of the next month, we're going to collect those ideas and further develop a plan on how to engage with the community to develop common ground, to develop the things that we believe that we all share and that we all want to aspire to. And that begins, if I had a starter's pistol, I'd fire it now, maybe not in school, maybe that's a bad idea, but that begins now with the discussion about community engagement. And of course, if there's anything else the community wants to discuss tonight, you'll be given an opportunity to do that as well. And that's my report. And again, I thank you very much for being here tonight.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Dolan. I appreciate that. I'm very glad to see everyone coming out tonight. As Dr. Dolan very clearly mentioned, we have prioritized community engagement as something the board is clearly aware needs to improve in the community. I think, as some of you know, I've been going around to the various parent organizations, and I've spoken to at least 150 to 200 parents in our district over the last, I guess, week. And I've noticed a couple things. I've noticed that the conversations we have there reflect the conversations that we have with our neighbors, with people that we're friends with, that we can discuss things with. They're different than the kinds of conversations we have here. That alone sets the tone for the fact that there are different ways to engage people, different ways to engage this conversation. And I think the board has a lot to hear and a lot to listen. So I think tonight is going to be about listening. I'm glad you're here to share what you have to say, building on something that Dr. Dolan said, and this is not specifically about this, but I'll lead back to it. In those talks that I've had, I have spoken about the blue ribbon and what an exciting thing it is. And I did want to mention, of course, congratulations to the leadership team at the high school. Congratulations to the staff, the faculty, to the students. But one of the things that I've been saying as I go around from building to building, from group to group, is that I do believe there is a false dichotomy out there that there's somehow the community and the school. I really don't believe that's the case. I believe the schools here are reflective of our community. I think they reflect our values. This has always been a community that deeply respects education and deeply values our schools. Our schools are certainly the largest entity. They're what brings all these various communities together. And I think if we can build that sense of community through this engagement process, we're all going to be better off as a community and as a school, and ultimately for the kids, because this is better for them when we can be more together and working more communicatively. So beyond that, I don't have that much to say tonight because we're really here to listen. But I do want to give the other trustees an opportunity to talk about what they'd like to comment on this process or add to this process. So I'll open it up to my fellow trustees.
I'll start.
Sure, we can go around. That's fine.
So I think a big part of community engagement is I think we all need to refine our listening skills and hear what people are saying. I think a natural tendency in every person is you're thinking about how you're responding, and maybe you're missing the nuances of what people are saying. So I think we could do a better job there and acknowledging to them that we're listening. I also think we have missed over the years key ways to include people. I'll give an example. So when we were doing the LAC applications, I suggested that we take, not because of this is no reflection for anyone who was selected, but I made the suggestion that what we do as a PTO in the high school is in the middle school is we take a representative from every elementary school on to the PTO. So we feel that all three schools with their own unique characteristics are represented. And I had suggested that for LAC, and for various reasons that wasn't followed. But I think what we failed to do is include the voices that are different from the majority voices up here. And it's a long-standing issue in this community. Going back before I was on this board, about representation up here on the board, representation on committees. And I think we really need to embrace that. I think we need to, one of the suggestions I made was post the application for the Board of Ed online so people could access to it. And then they could talk to Betty if they were really interested in how to proceed. I think we could be more welcoming of and reaching out to people who have expressed an interest in different areas to encourage them to apply for these committees. And the more people we have on divergent views, the better product we're going to have at the end of the day. The other thing I think we don't do well that we could do better is surveying the community, asking the right questions. So we had some major changes in curriculum, and this predates Chris, when we brought in the IB, and there was a lot of opposition in the community to the IB. There were a number of people who came. We introduced elementary FLES. And what we didn't do, I don't think, was poll the community. Not that that would be determinative, but it certainly would be informative. And we didn't follow up, right? So, you know, when there are opportunity costs every time we put in a program, when we put in elementary FLES, and no one's going to argue that introducing foreign languages to children at a young age is a bad thing. Obviously, it's a good thing, right? But there were opportunity costs. We lost some music instruction, some recess. We never really followed up with, how's it going? How could we do this better? If you had a choice, would you rather your child have FLES? Maybe your child would rather have more STEAM instruction, maybe more recess. Did we ask the teachers, how's it going? When I asked for evaluations of these programs, really what I got were like feel-good demonstrations rather than informative feedback from the community, from the parents, from the students, from the faculty. And I think the same thing with IB. You know, when I asked for an evaluation of it, what I really got were, 6 students lined up with the IB coordinator standing over them. To me, just not a meaningful evaluation. So I think we could send out all sorts of surveys about curriculum, about health and welfare, about improvements we could make, facilities, what's important. We did a whole bond project and we only had a small committee. And the previous time we did a bond project, when I was first on the board, we had huge committees walking through the buildings. And before we even narrowed the scope of the project, we had the community involved. Different people value different things. And I really think that we do things sort of in a vacuum, and we don't do the necessary follow-up. We don't do the necessary upfront outreach. And I think that's not necessarily just driven by the board, because we really had nothing to say about FLES or IB. We didn't vote on it, or some of the other programs. But I think if you really want to keep your community engaged, if you want people to go out and support the budget, if you want people to go out and support a bond, we really have to do a better job of engaging the community, asking those questions in a survey form, in a meeting form, whatever other ways that people can think of. But I think there's a feeling up here, a feeling in the community by part of the community, I could be mistaken, but the impressions I get from conversations with people in the comments here, that there's a disconnect between a large section of the community and the Board of Education. And that's not a new feeling. That has been here as long as I have been here. But it's really become much more apparent in the past, year and a half or so, 2 years. And I think we really have to address this and have people feel that we're having a conversation with them, and that we're not speaking to them or at them from our point of view, and trying to impose it and persuade them that that's the correct point of view. So, I mean, I think we really have to hear back from the community how they would like that engagement to occur. But that's some of my ideas and perceptions, having lived in this community close to 30 years, having volunteered in this community over 20 years. There's a really big rift that needs to be repaired, and we can't start doing that soon enough.
Thank you. Trustee Jones, Vice President Jones?
Thank you. Thank you, Mary Ann. I can't disagree. Prior to that, when I was thinking about this topic, I thought of it in terms of some categories in which we have some existing mechanisms, right, for community interactions and engagement that are good, but they could definitely use some improvement. Like we have the newsletter, but I think the community engagement piece with the newsletter and the surveys would be a significant improvement that should continue through all of the newsletters, so that people always have a way to give us, so that it's clear we're asking for feedback and giving people a clear mechanism for that. We have the community education program. It's possible that is a really positive program that does a lot of stuff, but I really do think there are ways that we could proactively promote it and expand it in many different directions, because it's a way that really capitalizes on the facilities and everything else that we have. Our arts and music program has long been this. Our concerts obviously open to the community, and we do send both our visual arts and our musicians into the community, but I think there's a lot more that could be done there as well. Like, it's great, but there could be more. We have committees that have public members, but we should look at that. If there are ways to expand them, there are ways to make that more clear to the public. And I mean, I do think with this last round of public committees, we did a tremendous job to put it on the website, to mail it to every household, to put it in the local newspaper. But I think that's the kind of thing we should see more of. I think there's a lot around, another category is, I think there's a lot around volunteerism that we should look at. We know internally that we have students that volunteer as much as 100 hours, right, while they're here. And we know that there's a lot going on here at the high school to sort of facilitate that, and at the other schools too. But I think that's something where we want to look at it in a way that lets it run both ways, so that students have even more opportunities to volunteer in the community, but the community has more opportunities to volunteer with the schools too. And I don't want to imply that that is simple. I understand that's complex and that that's difficult, but that those interactions between the school and the community are important. And that's validated by the fact that when we do these surveys with our students, like Bach Harrison on engagement, that's one of the very specific pieces that they look at, is the extent to which students in the community are interacting. So I think it's difficult and it can be a lot of work, but the payoff is tremendous for everyone. I think LAC could have a role in this too, right? As a piece where there's some engagement between the board and the community. Years ago, we had town
Sarah,
halls.
can you just explain LAC?
Oh, I'm
to folks?
sorry.
Okay.
The Legislative Action Committee, which you can still apply for through tomorrow, is a longstanding subcommittee that reports to the board that works on ways to improve schools that have to be done through legislative change. So for example, if there's an unfunded mandate, like you must get rid of the lead in the water that's coming into your schools, they could then work on legislation that says, okay, that's great, you're right, but schools should get money to help do that, right? And they would do that. Historically, they've done things like organize the legislative breakfast, where we can talk with local legislators about very specific issues that impact our school district. But they've also done things that are community facing, right? So if there is something that's legislative, but that there needs to be a lot of visible support for the community for, they would be the people that would reach out to the community and say, hey, we all need to talk to our legislators about an issue. Years ago, we had town halls, which was a very much more of an open forum where we would say, like, if you have, regardless of whether it's on the agenda tonight, we really encourage people to come and talk about whatever the issues with they're concerned about. They were very, very lightly attended. So at some point, they sort of fell by the wayside, but it could well be time to bring back the town hall. And so those are the categories I can think of things we've done thus far that we could do much better. But I suspect that there's a whole new category of things that we could do that we're really looking to the community to talk about, right? I think that's the thing that we're hoping to hear much more about, is what the perspective is in the community about a whole new kind of thing. Not to say people can't discuss improvements on the old things, but we're looking for the new thing as well.
Makes sense. Go ahead, Rich, please.
I completely agree with everything Mary Ann and Sarah said. From an external perspective, quite often I hear from people that they would be more involved if they knew, but they just don't know. They don't hear things and they don't feel that there's a good line of communication between the district and the community at large. And I'm not weighing in one way or another on that piece. I'm just saying that's a consensus that I've heard. So I think one thing we need to do is improve on that. Some people feel that there's a small group in each particular school that basically are involved in everything, and it's sort of difficult to break into that group. And again, whether that's true or not, that's the perception. So I think what we need to do is think about ways to have a better outreach to the community, a more inclusive outreach, and to be more supportive of people being involved in what we are trying to do. For example, when we had the bond meetings, they were advertised fairly well and there was very poor attendance. And then people say, well, we know about them. Well, we need to figure out a way to make it even more clear to the community at large that these things are going on, and we really welcome input at those particular items. For many, many board meetings, there were very few people attending. It's very nice to see people that are now actually coming out and actively participating at the meetings, but for a long period of time, that was not the case. So I think part of the issue that we have to deal with, and it's not an easy fix, is how are we going to change that perception? And how are we going to increase, that outreach to the community and make people feel more welcome? Because again, all of us feel the same way. We feel we are doing that. We are really trying to do that, but that isn't necessarily the perception in the community.
Thanks, Rich. Lisa?
Well, it's hard to follow the four of you since you covered most of it. But I agree with, what was said so far. Obviously, community engagement is extremely important to us. It's, that's why we made it a goal. And I think that Dr. Dolan's presence at all the schools these past few weeks is a great example of what we can be doing, just being present in the community at all different kinds of events, at baseball games, at senior centers, at churches, I'm sure there's a long list and I can't think of everything, but hopefully the community will help us, give us ideas about where we can be present and have conversations about the district. And I agree. I think the surveys are a great idea as well, just to, continue to get the community's feedback.
Good. I thank everyone. I echo what my fellow trustees have said. I want to pick up on something Trustee Galati said, which is when you said people want to hear what they don't know. When I've been going around to the different groups, I was at the middle school last night and I started out just by talking briefly about LIPA, which is this huge obstacle we're going to be facing long-term in this district. And it was like my fifth talk maybe, so I was pretty good at it by that point, what I had planned. My first one I did without my notes. And then we did Q&A for about an hour or so. And at the end, as we were wrapping up, someone said, I just got to tell you, I learned more about LIPA in the 5 minutes that you started this discussion today than I have in the last 10 years I've been living here since the first plant closed, which to some degree is a success for those 5 minutes. And I'm glad that I started out with that, but it's certainly pretty, shines a light on the fact that somehow our communications as a district are not hitting the mark. That is something I heard over and over and over again. And when we all talk about listening, and that is why we're here. So I guess I apologize that I'm talking again, but we're almost done hearing us. When we talk about listening, I go to these meetings and I quickly, before I forget, last night my wife was like, I have dinner. I was like, I know, I'm going to write down my notes first and then we'll watch the Yankees. And I wrote down the themes that I keep hearing. And so I hear things like, we need simpler messaging. We need communication that we can read. We don't want to get through all the other stuff. We just want to hear what's going on. Rich, when you talked about it, there is a hunger to know what's going on. I believe people in this district want to support our schools. This is a community that, as I said, has historically supported our schools. And I think people want that information out there. And I think that's the goal of what we're talking about: better communication, simpler communications, sharing what's actually happening in our schools, because people haven't really heard the messages somehow that we're putting out there. And in terms of listening, one of the things that I did hear was about committees and participation. We mentioned all these things, but there isn't really, and there hasn't been a very clear way to present what the committees are, what the opportunities are for involvement. I think, Chris, you have a list of the committees and all the different ways for people to get involved in. If you don't mind, I wouldn't mind hearing them. And I think we should follow this up. If not tomorrow, but at least soon, by letting the community know. And again, a very simple, straightforward email that I think is indicative of the fact that there's a huge amount of volunteerism in this district. People are here now. People in the hundreds showed up to these meetings. The parent organizations, we raised $130,000 for HEPA filtration in less than a month last year. People want to help. People want to participate. People want to do stuff. I think people want to know how. And so if you could go through those, list what they are as a baseline for ways to get involved. And then I think we'll turn it over to the mic and hear from you all.
Don't forget me. Don't forget me.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're back on. We'll do the committees.
No,
We'll
yeah.
do
let
Andrea.
Chris go.
And then we'll go to the podium. Thank you, Andrea.
We have introduced a lot of new committees over the last few years, especially with our strategic plan. And we do have 3 strategic planning committees that are open committees. The Teaching and Learning Committee, which I actually facilitate with the curriculum directors, the Social Emotional Learning Committee, which is facilitated by Principal Bridget Binder and Dan Doherty, our Director of Counseling, and our Equity for All Learners Committee, which is chaired by Anna Aguiar, our Director of ENL and World Language. New this year, we will have a DASA Anti-Bullying Committee, and that's by board policy. We need to have that committee, so I'll be setting up that committee. Also, committees that are board committees that have existed, Health and Safety Committee, the Legislative Action Committee that was mentioned earlier, and the Wellness Committee. We also have specific task forces that run that are sometimes connected to the Strategic Planning Committee. We have a STEAM task force that's run by Dr. Smythe and Ms. DiMiola, our STEAM directors. And we have our Construction Steering Committee. Very good time to get involved in that, given everything that's going on with the bond work. and our athletic advisory committee that I think even if you don't have children in the secondary schools, it's a good time to get involved because that involvement will come up very quickly. And then finally, wellness committee as well.
Thanks, Dr. Z. Andrea?
Sure, we have so many committees. The one committee that's missing is the Community Engagement Committee. And I think that might be one that we consider moving forward. How do we let people know about these committees on a regular basis? I was thinking a little bit about how it works in the middle school or the high school where there's a club day. Maybe we should think about doing something like a committee day where members who are interested in volunteering for the district can come, speak to people on the committees, learn how to apply, learn when they meet. Almost like it seems like a one-stop shopping for volunteering to help. That might be a good solution. I'm glad that we all spoke a little bit about community outreach in terms of communication. I think sometimes I'm not sure if we have too little communication or too much communication. But I think maybe the goal is not just to make it simpler, but more dynamic, so it is more engaging. But I don't think we should solely define community outreach in terms of communication. And I guess I had some of the same or similar approach as Sarah in terms of looking at community outreach in terms of programming. And obviously we do lots of school-sponsored programming here. But if we all remember at the end of budget season, we had $10,000 put into our BOE budget with the purpose of coming up with some type of community program this year. And I'm hoping that we're going to be able to talk about that at the retreat, Dave. We have so many different performances. I wonder, do we send tickets or can we send tickets to the mutual concern organization to distribute to their members? We have community members who live in community residence and supported housing in this community. Can we send tickets to them so that they have a connection to our school? I was also thinking about schools across the country which have food pantries. They view their community outreach as being in part solving different kinds of societal problems. Can we partner with different organizations in that way where the school houses certain programs that can help people who live here? And I guess the last thing that I was thinking about was when we do hold events like budget boot camps, are we holding them at times that parents with young children are going to be able to attend? I know it's very hard if you don't have childcare or you're a single family parent, that attending those meetings at the school can be impossible. So I think we need to consider utilizing virtual meetings as well as making sure that we have some of our gatherings at times during the day when the children are in school, as well as at night, if that works for people. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to segue directly into public comment, but this can be, you just come to the podium, say your name and town of residence, and let's hear what you're thinking about this. By the way, theoretically, public comment can be about anything tonight, but we're going to try to focus on this at least at the beginning if we can.
Hi, my name is Gabrielle Menuza. I am a Glenwood Landing parent. I actually had been in touch with Dr. Dolan about an idea I had for community engagement. And I also emailed the board again today just to make sure people had time to look at it. Basically, my idea would be to form like a parent advisory committee where you would have like arbitrarily 2 representatives from each of the 5 schools coming together to form sort of like a parent council. And then the parent council could meet with the board or engage with the board in like a direct session. I think having something like this would be helpful because, you can have parent representatives in the school kind of on the ground where people will approach, possibly feeling more comfortable to approach the individual parents directly rather than appearing at a meeting like this. Or, I mean, as we've discussed, the timing is difficult for a lot of people. In addition to the fact people just don't like public speaking. So I mean, basically my idea would be to have these on the ground representatives for each school, and the issues could be, doesn't really have to be limited, but the issues could basically be whatever the current, concerns of people are in each school. So as we know, there's a lot of concerns over the COVID protocols. There's a lot of concerns about certain aspects of the curriculum. And I just feel like in my experience and my dealings with parents in my school, people feel more comfortable sort of approaching someone that may sort of serve as a representative for certain groups that do feel marginalized. And that is a real thing. I think there is a pretty significant disconnect between the board and just the random parent on the ground. So I really think that this would be a very helpful way to bridge that gap and potentially sort of address some of the divisiveness that's been going on in the community, because it does make things unpleasant. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants the kids to know about that or be involved in that. So that is basically my idea. And I just wanted to get some feedback from you all, if that's possible.
I don't know that we definitely all read it today, and I appreciate you sending it to me. I appreciate the reminder to have it in the meeting that I went to at Glenwood Landing today. One of the structural issues we have with these meetings is that they are bound by open meeting laws, and in terms of the back and forth from the podium, it's hard to have. That said, I would say the purpose tonight is for us to listen and to hear what you're saying, and so I think it's good for us to digest this. I think these are a lot of good ideas in there. I understand what you're saying. That coming here for logistical reasons is difficult. Coming here because there is, I hope I don't use, I'm using the word, but I hope it's not accurate. The intimidation factor, there shouldn't be an intimidation factor. I understand, but I try to treat folks who come to the podium with respect. And I feel that generally that's important to model for their kids who watch this. And everyone watches this. Not everyone, but enough people watch this that it's certainly we should all be modeling that kind of behavior. But I know it's difficult for folks timing wise. People have childcare issues. There certainly should not be the assumption that people have the ability to come to these night meetings for whatever reason. People work at night. There's all different kinds of situations. So the idea of having a conduit of information is well noted. And I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's an important thing and a gap that we have right now. So we'll take it into account and what you said. And I think there's something there for sure. I think there's a lot there.
I just think it would also be helpful to create sort of like a space for a meaningful dialogue.
I
which
agree.
I don't think can occur in a forum like this, to be honest.
I agree. In this public comment, there can't, but Sarah had mentioned the town hall idea, something that's less formal and can provide for more back and forth. And I think that also could be that kind of event or kind of events.
I mean, I think a town hall is a fair idea on if there's like a pressing issue, but I think just in support of what I'm saying, because there's so many issues ongoing, things are constantly evolving, like especially with COVID and curriculum and all of that. I think people should have the ability to always have access to somebody in their school that's going to come back and sort of like represent their interests. So I understand a town hall and I'm not against that, but I don't think that sort of like speaks to the need of a constant source available to address concerns.
I think the idea of people from each building in some way being involved with the doings of the business of the district would be a huge improvement in the conduit of information back and forth, that you could bring that to us. You can bring that, what goes on, or you or whoever it was the parent rep, bring that. I assume you're going to be involved in this. You're proposing it, but that you would bring it back to folks to reduce that level of that wall, let's say, that shouldn't be there.
Can I just say something from my years of being on the PTO? We would have a president's meeting once a month, I think, with Dr. Melnick when I was in some leadership positions. And a lot of the information was funneled that way to Dr. Melnick. I think this is a comparable idea, but different, right? Because the PTO's agenda is different than what you're speaking about.
Yeah.
And I think there's a way to very effectively form this committee. And we can think about how the best way to get the information that you're collecting to the board. Maybe it would be something of the type of model that we do as a PTO, with a council meeting with Dr. Dolan, a once a month kind of thing, issues that are on the horizon. I do think, based upon some of the comments, there's been, I think, some misapprehension of the intent of certain speakers and readings, and there are, I think, multiple layers of concern here that I think this idea would address. So I think one of the things we have to talk about is, if we were to proceed with this, what format it would take, so that there's a regular reporting, and how the information would flow to the entire board. It could even just be, you could alternate board members, you could do it with Dr. Dolan, you could do reports like we do with other committees. But I think there's a lot that we have to think about structurally on that. And I'd like to talk us to brew on that. And I think we do have on the next meeting, community engagement again. So I'd like to circle back, and I'd be interested in hearing from you as to what format you would like that to take, and how the flow of the information would occur. I understand that conceptually what you want, but then what's missing for me for that piece is, how do we get that information that you're gathering
I understand, like, so procedurally.
procedurally?
Yeah, and it isn't, as you said, it's not like a PTO or an SCA in my case, because their mandate, as my understanding is that they do fundraising. They're not a parent advocacy group, so, or none of them are. That's my understanding.
They're
So-
not allowed to,
Right, they're not, it's not in their charter, so.
and their
this is
charters,
not-
it
right,
says it. I mean, I drafted some of the bylaws, so yeah.
Yeah, so this would be totally different. But- Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
And Ms. Menuza,
Trustees?
I'd be happy to be,
Yeah, sorry.
I'd be happy to receive from you any of those ideas, and as I've done, the board will get them. Thank you, and thank you for being here.
Sarah?
Trustees, if I could just remind everybody procedurally, let's hear from everyone, and then anything we wish to discuss further, we should bring up in new business. But let's make sure we hear everybody's input. Thank you.
Thank you. It was slightly new system still, but now it lights up here. So
Okay.
how
Hi,
much better is that? Thanks.
my name is Marian Hudgenowski and I'm a resident of Glen Head. This is now my second Board of Education meeting, so I've shortened my comments to accommodate the time limitations on speakers. An email was sent out by North Shore Schools this past Monday, the 20th. And the last line of that email read, "Please make sure that masks are worn within established guidelines found at the following link." I clicked on the link, and the first thing you notice that it brings me to the CDC's website, and that the document has not been updated since April 19th, 2021. There's also a warning that reads archived web page. This web page is for historical purposes and is no longer being updated. For the latest information, view the COVID-19 homepage. So I clicked on that link, and it brought me again to their guidelines for masks with no mention of children, except for this section. Clear masks or cloth masks with a clear plastic panel are an alternative type of mask for people who interact with young children or students learning to read. I'm not sure why this alternative has not been implemented in the schools. I have a first grader who's learning to read. It goes on to say that the CDC recommends you ask their healthcare provider for advice about the person you are caring for wearing a mask. If they are unable to wear a mask, ask their healthcare provider about alternative ways of reducing transmission risk. So clearly there are alternatives to wearing a mask to reduce the transmission risk. Further down on the page is a link that says you can find more information about the CDC's current study of the effectiveness of various cloth mask materials. Refer to our scientific brief, community use of cloth masks to control the spread of SARS-CoV-2. However, when you click on their current study, it was last updated almost 5 months ago, May 7th, 2021. This was the same document that I referenced at the August Board of Education meeting. So I'll reiterate it again. There have been no studies done on mask wearing in children, the short-term or long-term effects. I asked Dr. Dolan at the meet and greet what measuring tools would be used to reevaluate the decision to force our children to wear masks. His response was twofold, based on the Department of Health statistics of cases in the Glen Head area, which he said we're doing quite nicely, and the percentage of vaccinated adults in our area. I personally don't see the correlation between vaccinated adults and forcing my child to wear a mask, and I'm hoping the board can clarify that correlation in the future. I know we're not doing that tonight. There are other districts larger than ours fighting to allow their children freedom of choice in regards to wearing a mask. Also, if you are basing your decision on the guidelines of the CDC, who has presented no data on the effects of mask wearing in children, then how can you still force them to wear masks? There have been several studies done on the negative impact of wearing masks, both physically and emotionally, but those studies were presented to the board and dismissed in August. Based on zero evidence of the positive effects of children wearing masks, I'm not sure why you cannot allow the parents to decide what's best for their children. Some might want to keep the masks on forever, and that's okay, but others don't want to do that, and we should be allowed to make that choice for our children. We are ultimately the ones responsible for their health and safety, and where there's a possibility of harm to our children, there really must be choice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Merope Zervos, and I have a child that goes to Glenwood Landing. Given that a culture of connection and a sense of belonging are foundations for a healthy school community, we will build a safe environment that emphasizes acceptance, equity, inclusivity, cultural competency, and a respectful, open exchange of ideas for all learners. That statement is part of the North Shore 2018 to 2023 strategic plan. Under US law, every child has the right to attend public school from K to 12, regardless of race, gender, religion, or immigration status. School officials are responsible for providing a safe learning environment free from discrimination, harassment, or violence. Unfortunately, this is not true for the North Shore community. After speaking to parents, students, and even some of your faculty, all say the same thing to me over and over again. Please do not mention my name. They fear retaliation, verbal abuse, or becoming an outcast by their peers. Students against students, teachers against students, parents against faculty. How is this a safe environment? 1 second, I think I'm just, hold on, yes. You have a faculty that has decided that the school has become their political platform, endorsing and promoting their political beliefs and views. This is an educational institution. Faculty is here to teach, not to endorse their beliefs, nor to discuss sexual preferences or orientation. Students are scared to speak up, fearing backlash from faculty and or their peers. This is all because of a difference of opinion. Parents fear speaking to the teachers and fear that their child will receive backlash. There is no bridge between the community and the school district. People are scared. Students are scared. Even some of your own faculty are scared. Where is the safe environment? In the words of Abraham Lincoln, a house divided against itself cannot stand. It all begins with your faculty. All personal, political, sexual, religious beliefs and organizational endorsements need to stop, and they need to stop now. Your faculty has made this personal, and your students are feeling it. Students have told me that they have been uncomfortable with certain classroom discussions that they have started by faculty. This has led to bullying, and to name calling outside the classroom. I reiterate to the board, school officials are responsible for providing a safe learning environment free from discrimination, harassment, or violence. We are experiencing discrimination and harassment, all because of a difference of opinion. We are divided as a community, masked versus unmasked, vaccinated versus unvaccinated, Democrats versus Republicans, privileged versus unprivileged, Seacliff versus Glen Head, board versus community. We are divided more than you realize. We should all be here for one common goal, our children, our community, our school. I ask the board for an olive branch to build a bridge between you and us. Let's meet halfway, put all our egos to the side, put our opinions to the side, and do this all for our children. Help us to give our children a safe learning environment free from discrimination, harassment, or violence.
So I'm glad that you came and spoke tonight. I hope you don't feel intimidated or scared or bullied in speaking to us today. Anytime there is any violence in our schools, it should be reported immediately to your building leader, that's the principal. And if it's not taken up in that level, you should go up the chain. There is no place for violence in our schools. There is no place for political agendas of faculty and individuals in the schools. That said, there are all, and again, I'm going to provide some counterpoints here, but it doesn't mean that I'm telling you that what you said is no good or that you're no good or that there's a problem there, because I am glad to hear that perspective. And I think that you are right when you say that we're divided in a lot of ways, but I also know, I believe we are united in a lot more ways than we are divided, and not just because of those divisions. I have not, in the same way you're saying, seen those divisions. I coached softball through the Seacliff softball, which is not part of the school district. And the Seacliff softball is the only softball game in town. There's a Glen Cove baseball, there's a Glen Head baseball, and there's a Seacliff baseball, but there's only one softball. And everyone came together and everyone is together. And then when they come back to the middle school and all meet each other again, it's a great way for them all to be together. I think that we in this community are experiencing the coming together, like you very well said. And I said this in my talks around town as well. The only thing you really need to go to public school here, you have to prove some things, but the only thing you really need is a utility bill with one of these zip codes, and then you're in. That's the difference between a private school. That's the difference between magnet schools or other ways that people organize their educational structure. And so because of that, and because of the nature of this union-free school district, where we have different kinds of communities that are pulled together, there are those differences. That is correct. The purpose of a school is not to indoctrinate anyone in those beliefs. However, the purpose of a school is to make sure that everyone is treated with respect, which I think is something as a commonality that we're saying. What does occur sometimes, as we know, is there's, I don't want to say a rock and a hard place, but there are times when different student experiences come into conflict with each other, different beliefs. It is the role of the school to bring those people together, to reduce that. So on the one hand, no one should feel shunned for who they are. One of the things that we have heard at this podium is that students have been told it's not okay to be the gender identification with which you were born that's on your birth certificate. That is not the message of this school. People have been told that it is not okay to believe all different sorts of things from the left and the right. That is not the message of the school, but it is the message of the school at the appropriate level. And that's always a question that school districts do grapple with, to make sure that students are introduced to things at the appropriate age, appropriate time, so they can understand their world, learn about their world, and eventually go off into the world and be prepared to live in a world that has all these different experiences and people and backgrounds and identities and approaches. And so it's not that when students are exposed to, for example, non-traditional gender identities, that is forcing anyone else to do it, but it is the expression of that other student who may be identifying as a different gender, that they have a right, of course, as I'm sure you agree to be in our schools and to be able to come to school. And honestly, not to really think about it that much, to still do math, science, gym, lab, all the rest of the stuff that kids do. And for the most part, this school, really completely the administration of the school, the board of the school is invested in bringing those people together in that way so we can all learn as a community. There are times when it doesn't necessarily work, and we grapple with that as a society, and there's no question, and we're still figuring it out. I think our faculty do a great job. I'm very proud of our faculty here in North Shore, but it doesn't mean everyone has all the answers. No one's figured out these answers. I mean, politically, people are divided in this country and in this community, and I think we would also agree no one's come up with a path to really improve that, right? I mean, it's, certainly within our own families. I know in my own family, there are people with very different opinions, and we're still family, but it's not getting better, really. I don't find that it's getting better in terms of those things. And that's reflected in our school too. But I do want to be able to get to a place where people don't feel, that there's that level of distrust in the school, that they're trying to indoctrinate kids or young adults into being things that they're not comfortable with. When I went to, my kids are in 8th and 9th grade right now, and I attended the 8th grade moving up ceremony, and Principal Contreras welcoming the upcoming 8th graders. Some of you have heard me, many of you heard this. He said to the entire population of 8th graders, I know you may be nervous. So many of you are asking me, what do I have to do to be prepared to be a 9th grader and to succeed in high school? And his answer was very clear. There's nothing you need to do. You're perfect just the way you are, whoever you are, whatever you bring to the table. And that's the message that I think is emblematic of what we're trying to teach as a district here, and what we're trying to bring to the table. So we need to hear what you're saying. We need to hear someone come to the podium and say, my 6th grader is told that he can't be a boy. Sorry, my 6-year-old is told that he can't be a boy, because we need to hear that. When we talk about listening, if that's what people are experiencing, if that's what people hear about the school district, we need to know what's going on.
It is going on both ends. I'm not saying it's not going on for the child that is struggling with their identity, but it's also going on for the child that isn't struggling for their identity.
And
so we have a problem.
I agree, absolutely. And I also know that if there are cases, obviously, as when I'm probably a little older, I guess, than other people here, heartbreaking, but it is what it is. But when we were all in school, we experienced the similar things. There are certainly times when we would go to the bathroom and see something written on the stall that was abhorrent. That's part of our society. I don't think we're going to solve that at North Shore. I don't think that's going to be, I mean, it'd be wonderful if we thought that could be solved in the near future, let alone our lifetimes. That's a bigger issue than I think this board and this can really address. But there are times when students directly do things that are hurtful to other students from both directions. But even the students who are doing things that are hurtful are still our students and still need our care and the love of the district and the educators. Everyone needs the benefit of this institution, no matter what their approach is. So I think those are areas of commonality. We want kids to come to school. We want them to make friends. We want them to be experiencing school without the quote unquote distraction of having to feel that who they are is somehow getting in the way of what they need to be doing here. And that's tough, and it's tough in our society. I think in the conversations I've had when I was meeting with the Glenhead group, there was a parent who spoke on the meeting and said that her child was told by another child that they weren't comfortable playing with them because of what they looked like. And before that we were talking about finances, so it was a shift in topic, but it was a horrible story and a horrible thing to hear, but it was also a good entry point for everyone to realize no one wants that to happen to their kid. No one wants to be that parent where their child comes home and shares that experience for any reason. If they're wearing, if they're wearing clothes that are not with the identity that they were assigned to, if they're wearing a Trump hat, there's no reason why anyone should feel that they can't express themselves in a way that is respectful to others in our school buildings. But that is something we are working on, but it is not in any way the goal of this board, is not accepted by this board. And I also know, because I've heard it from both sides, you're right. There is no unanimity of our faculty. Our faculty are as diverse as in terms of political views and approaches to religion, finance, life, as the world in general. So that's probably my long-winded answer, but it is a long-winded answer. But I do think it's important that the goal is to find those commonalities. That's why we're having events like this. That's why we're listening. That's why I've been going around to these schools. And when I talk about there's more opportunities for unity, that's what I see in those meetings. I went around expecting to kind of get yelled at a little bit by folks at some of these buildings. It didn't happen at all yet. I still have a couple more to go. But I think that's what I find in the community. So I'm really glad you brought it up today, because I don't just want to talk about, not that we have been, but I want to talk about the blue ribbon. I'm really excited. It was a great thing for our school. I want to talk about the track being reopened, and now, Tom, the track is reopened to the whole community. I was going to ask you, not just great. So I want to talk about those good things, but we also need to talk about those tough things too, and hear each other on them. So I thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have it. Diana Mueller, I'm in Glen Head, but Glenwood Landing Schools. I don't have any speech planned, but I wanted to congratulate everybody on the Blue Ribbon nomination. And to your point with FLES, I wanted to say that I have like such a great experience seeing my now second grader and kindergartner, two boys, talking Mandarin to each other a little bit back and forth. And I know that's something I had no part in, and they're bringing that home. And I know the schools were 100% that. And it's wonderful to see as far as feedback from a parent. So I thought I'd offer that to you. It's really great. And my question is, if you could tell me a little bit more about the process with which we kind of garner legislative funds to achieve our goals through things that are mandated that we don't have funds for currently. Like if the state mandates testing for employees going forward, who's going to pay for that? Can you tell me a little bit more about the process for getting those monies?
I'll start, and someone else might want to speak about the LAC committee, because I'm not as familiar with it. But my personal agenda has been to meet with as many of our state and local legislators as I have. In my short time here, I've had a long meeting with Laura Curran, a long meeting with Senator Gorin, a long meeting with Assemblyman Ra, a very short meeting with Assemblyman Levine. He was on his way to something, but nonetheless, he came to see me. He came to our office and met. And in all of those conversations, the two words that come up in all of them are unfunded mandates. And I haven't been on that soapbox in a long time, and I won't climb on today. But we also do that through all of our professional groups. I know that NISCUS, my organization, the New York State Council of School Superintendents, I know that NYSET talks about unfunded mandates all the time. So that's the organizational way. But rest assured, any meeting that I have with an elected official, one of the unspoken messages is, and when those special funds come across your desk, we've got some great projects here as well. And I know that happened at least once. Olivia had an occasion where she met with someone and a check showed up shortly thereafter. I don't remember who it was. Who was it, Olivia? Chuck Levine? Yeah, I mean, and that's why, they're good public servants and they deserve our support. But it is another nice reason to go and meet, and that's what I've been doing. I've got one left, and I will have met every elected official representing this district.
Okay.
And LAC, does somebody want to talk about LAC? Because I don't know what role that plays with legislators.
Sure. So LAC is a subcommittee of the board. There are 9 members. They're on rotating 3-year terms. There are several openings. We're looking forward to applications. They were all sent out in the mail. We're looking forward to folks from a variety of backgrounds. There are essentially 2 main directives for LAC, one of which is the one we haven't spoken about, which is similar to other things that we have talked about, which is to be a back and forth conduit of information between the board and the community. So which used to mean going to back to school nights and having a booth, and now there's no back to school night in person. There's no booth. There's no Spirit Wear is all
At least for right
online.
now.
But
At least for now.
at least for now,
Yeah.
certainly we're all
Yeah.
hoping to, yes, shed and get back to normal. So that was one area that's part of their charge in their charter. The second is that the board will have a public discussion identifying the areas of concern, which I'd be getting ahead of myself because the board hasn't had that discussion yet about what they'll be for this year. But in last year, for example, it was potentially advocating for LIPA funds because there was a proposed settlement that we needed assistance with and helping to educate the community and potentially engage in letter writing campaigns, et cetera. Another one was to as I've spoken about in my meetings, the tax map down there it's not a checkerboard, because in checkerboard, they're all the same size. There's little tiny ones and the big ones, and it's more like a risk board.
Right.
Sorry, I'm revealing myself as a nerd here, but these are the games I play. And so some of them are tiny, some of them are large, and identifying what they are has been a process, a multi-year process. Olivia is our assistant superintendent for business, has done a very good job of working with the county's office to try to get that information. But to try to identify what's going on down there is not always easy. In part, and I realize I'm on tape, so I'm saying this, it's not necessarily in their interest to be, not the county, but to be terribly forthcoming about what's going on down there and who's doing what.
Yeah.
The private entities, and
Right.
they're doing what they're doing. So those are some examples. The unfunded mandates, the one you brought up is a perfect example. The state has mandated that our staff either be vaccinated or be tested weekly. That doesn't happen for free,
Right.
and they're not giving us any money for it. And we didn't know about that when we set our budget. So that is a case in point of an unfunded mandate. Another example, and then I'll finish up, would be the past couple of years, they had something called the APPR, which is the method by which teachers are evaluated. It was both completely testing driven and Albany controlled. We feel as a district that we can integrate testing to some degree in that, but that's not how we measure our students, and we don't want it to be how we measure our faculty. And we want our local control in that. I understand there are districts where that may be the case, but again, as a high performing district that, with all due humility, I think we have a pretty good sense of what's going on here. We feel we can evaluate our teachers in a way that we'd like to have more say. And so we advocated for that as a
Alright.
LAC.
Dave, it's
Yeah.
not all 3-year terms. Some of the terms are 3, 2, and 1. They're different terms under the bylaws for LAC.
I think for the bylaws, they're all 3 years actually, because now we have 9 members. We rewrote the bylaws. They're all 3. There are some unexpired terms. People move, people resign, so they're a little hairy. But theoretically, if we started from scratch, they would all be 3-year terms.
Okay.
We used to have 11, and so it was different, but we cut it down to
From the
9.
very beginning, there were different,
That's
the
correct.
very
You're right.
different terms, regardless of the number of
Yes.
members. And one of the other things that they've worked on is having a legislator night. So they've brought a couple of legislator nights with the local legislators from the state and the county have come and answered public's questions.
Okay, that's important.
Thank you, though.
All right, that's it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Roger, is this on?
It is.
Okay, Roger
Oh.
Friedman Seacliff. The new mics are working great. We can literally hear everybody tonight. I congratulate you on that. I would like to say that there are many different political philosophies represented in this room, and I think that without a doubt, the 99.9% of our community supports not teaching not ideologically indoctrinating our students. And I would hope that doesn't happen. It sounds to me like more of a bullying kind of an issue, and that shouldn't happen either. So I would hope that those incidences get reported and dealt with, and everybody is, and that gets worked out, and people are taught how to respectfully speak to each other, even though they differ. I want to say a couple of things about community engagement. One, I agree with Mary Ann's point that there's been over the last year and a half, it's gotten really bad with the seeming divide between the school district and the community. And the only corollary or variable that I can see as having happened is that there has been, over that year and a half, a concerted effort by certain members in the community to spread disinformation about the district. And this, I'll get to the engagement piece of this, but I don't think we can underestimate the effect of that intentional spreading of false information. At least for the last 2 cycles of the board, there have been direct mailings, unsolicited emails, robocalls, literally containing misinformation about the district finances. So I think, and also even accusing the board and the administration of malfeasance and breaking the law. And I've said it before here, a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has time to put its pants on. And that just goes to the point that the misinformation is easy, and the district finances, as somebody who spent a considerable amount of time trying to really understand them, are very complex. and nuanced. But the time needs to be taken, I think, by the district to break down finance to the most basic level. I mean, we have the reserves listed on the website, the status of the district reserves and the ins and the outs, but we don't have what is a reserve fund. Why do we have reserve funds? I've seen other districts, and I can share examples with the board of actual like two-minute video presentations of explaining why districts and governmental agencies and governments use reserve funds. I think something to that granular level for the community would be extremely helpful. You know, how do they function? Getting back to LIPA, like you said, I mean, that's been a huge thing for years, coming at us like a freight train, and nobody really understands it. So the history, the you know, what the reduction in funds are, how the state grants, you know, were used to offset that, all of that stuff. And I mean, I have a lot of stuff written down here, but I think we have to meet the community where they are, and getting information out is, you know, shooting out an email or giving a link to a website is great, but people are on Facebook, people are on Twitter, people are on Instagram. There's this new thing called TikTok, I think. I've heard of that. I have no idea.
It's not that new anymore, Roger.
No. that was the joke. So the website is not enough, and also, I mean, to Peter's credit, he did a great job of sending out extremely detailed emails about in response to some of that misinformation. They were too damn long, and you know, it's just so into the weeds that, you know, people don't read them. So the other thought I had listening to people were the budget copies were great, very poorly attended, you know. But maybe instead of just a budget coffee, it would be a you know, once a month district coffee where people can come and talk to you guys and the superintendent in a much less formal setting. So I think that's it. And I mean, I think, you know, I know I think you have to respond to the constant refrains forcefully, strongly, and with simple, clear, accurate information. You know, the refrain of our cost per student is too high, you know, well, there are reasons for that. And I think it should be, I think the community should understand what drives our cost per student. And I don't think it's hard to do. I think it's, you know, it's time consuming and probably a full-time job for somebody to break all this down. But I don't think I can overstate how important it would be for the community when somebody says our cost per student is $10,000 too high. You know, they're implying that they want to defund our education by $26 million because we have 2,600 students. So people need to understand what those, you know, what's behind the innuendo. So that's it. Thank you very much for all you do. Congratulations on the Blue Ribbon Award. I think that's phenomenal.
Thanks, Roger. I think one of the things that has come up when I go around to the schools is it's clear that I'm certainly not going to comment anything specific about our communications that have gone on before, because that is behind us and we're here to look forward. But it's clear that our communication messages haven't been effective. And in that void, other messages have gone out. For example, we had our reorganizational meeting and new trustees were sworn in, and we Vice President Jones and Dr. Dolan and I took our oaths of office, and we then allocated funds from fund balance. And within 24 hours, there was a video online of all of us circulating, talking about how we were breaking the law and they were going to apply for an emergency stay to stop this law breaking. So then when that was rejected by the commissioner as baseless, there was no follow-up video. I don't know if you guys all noticed that. That didn't also go around letting everyone know that was not correct. That's going to happen. That's not for us to determine how people prosecute their case or well, hold on, Roger. I don't want to back and forth, but I think the point I'm making is if we can figure out a better way to fill the void with accurate information, I think we'll have less to worry about. The goal is not to pass a budget by 100% of everyone agree with us. This is a community that does get to have a differences of opinion. And some people can feel that they don't support the budget or they don't like the direction of what we're doing. But as I said at one of these meetings, I do believe that if every single resident sat down for 2 hours and we were able to meet with them individually, have a full story of what's going on here, we would certainly not have 100% support for what we're doing, but I don't think we'd have 50.001% for what we're doing either. And so I think, and that is to some degree the backdrop of this conversation. But the other backdrop of this conversation is what, and I didn't get everyone's name and I apologize, but is the student experience. And that message it's not getting through. And I think that's part of also, it's not just about the budget. It's not just about that misinformation. It's about being able to communicate with each other better about what's really going on here, to build more confidence in what we're doing and to realize that, because, we as a board, we all ran for office. Like we weren't born, this isn't like a feudal system where I somehow got this because my dad was on the board. We ran and we talked about what we did and the community selected us for better or worse. Was that because there was no one better? Maybe, I don't know. But this is where we are. But we still do feel like because of that, in a very basic democratic way, we do represent the community. And so the idea that there's this disconnect is real and people are feeling it. There's no way to get around it. I think it's also important for us to say we do feel like we were here to represent people in general. That's what we're doing. It's why we're volunteering our time to try to do the best here, and that's why we're making this a priority for the year. So just real quick, sorry.
Yeah, real quick. That's an instructive example because the video went out and there really was, the commissioner poo-pooed it, but there was really I didn't see the response. I don't
Correct.
think the community knows that the commissioner poo-pooed it. So that's important. And I was going to, one of my notes was the student experience. What we did with the group was trying to post the artwork and the stuff that Shelley was posting on the website and spread that out through Facebook. But I think it's a district function more than a individual.
If we knew, we'd be doing it already, but I think the answer is we don't exactly know, which is why we are, as Dr. Dolan talked about, we're here listening. I'm glad you came. Please.
Pat Armato, Brookville. I've been coming to this meeting for about 8 years now. One of my first meetings when my daughter, who's now in 7th, was in kindergarten. There was maybe 3 parents here for the board and me. And I said, how come there's never a big turnout? And they said, well, it's a good thing when there's no turnout because that means everything's going smoothly. And clearly in the last few meetings, I think just comes to show, I don't mean to beat a dead horse. Like you said, there is a big discrepancy. And I'm just going to go back to what I said at the August meeting at the auditorium. I feel like maybe there is a division. There's a division in this country. There's a division in the world, and we have to work through it. But I think the main problem is that what the parents feel with the district or with the board is that there is lack of transparency. That's what has been in the past. So we talked about this engagement of us coming back and having an open discussion about it. I think it's great. I've been in many committees. I mean, Dr. Z knows I've been in committees for the past 7 years, including in the summer, bringing little kids with me and participating with teachers. So I've been actively involved. And historically, it's always the same parents. It's always the same teachers, various students when they're invited to come in. So at the last coffee with Dr. Dolan, one parent mentioned we need to put term limits on committees and try to get more parents to be involved. I think that would be great. Somebody mentioned a newsletter. In 8 years, I don't think I've ever seen a Board of Ed newsletter, and maybe that's on my fault. So I've mentioned to Shelley also, we get bombarded with emails with, from principals, from the PTO, from the district, from work, from everybody. I feel like our website is not always updated. And I know it takes a full-time job to be putting information in the minutes and all of that, but perhaps there's a way that we can come up with one app. And we have to give people accountability, the parents, the students, the board, the faculty. Everybody needs to be accountable for. If I haven't seen a newsletter, that's on me. I need to find out. I need to perhaps go through my emails better and understand what's out there. And I think that's something that we need to lead by example for our children also. Well, we have the exam, well, you need to pay attention. It's on you. So leading by example for our students is something that we all need to do, and also learn how to walk through this division that we're experiencing in our community, right? So I feel like as far as the faculty, parents are showing up, The board is here. I know it's supposed to trickle down. And I know the faculty have family on their own and many of them don't live in this district. Perhaps there's a way that we can revert back or give feedback to the faculty of what's going on. Perhaps there's a disconnect where the parents and the teachers are not seeing eye to eye. What we hear from our kids at home, what's coming in from a direct student, from a direct teacher, it's not necessarily reflecting back to you guys. So I think that's where the disconnect. What people are seeing at elementary school that's happening with their kids and their teachers, it's not necessarily what the faculty and the principals are reverting back to you. And I'll give a perfect example. You know, I am a firm believer that when we come to school, we need to stick to facts, that your beliefs, religion, political, sexual orientation needs to be left at the door. We're all equal. We need to be kind to everybody, no matter the color of your skin, the color of your hair, wearing a skirt or whatever, it doesn't matter. But there have been teachers in the past, in last year, and I would say, I almost want to say it wasn't my kid, social studies, that come in with a hashtag BLM t-shirt. And yes, Black Lives Matter, so they're white, so they're Hispanic, so do all lives matter. So if it's a social study teacher, I don't agree that that is an appropriate clothing to wear to school. You need to come in and provide, you know, a discussion for the kids, right? You know, Flag Day, this happens in my daughter's class. It happened to be on Pride Month, and we're celebrating Pride. Last year, which to my personal opinion, in the 6th grade was taking a little too far with a guest that came in to talk about books on Zoom, and things got a little out of hand, and that has been addressed. But that, for example, was sent to the parents on an email, click here, it wasn't really broadcasted in a way. So like I said, you know, in my last meeting, maybe there's an app that was saying, okay, next week, this is what's coming, and maybe we can get notifications and then give parents accountability. Listen, was there? If it's there and you didn't see it, it's on you, right? 2 other things. So I spoke to Dr. Z also about having the directors of every subject perhaps have meetings, open discussions with the parents. I don't know how it would work, but I want to know what really is being taught in English in the middle school, or what's the math for 7th grade. And I had a discussion with my daughter's English teacher, because she brought a book home and I Googled it and I didn't think it was appropriate. And the teacher tells me it's part of the new novel that it's coming down, I guess, from state, federal, I don't know. So as parents, what the kids are reading today, it's not what we read. I don't think my 7th grader is, you know, I don't think she's ready to be reading what's particularly in that book. So the teacher was very kind, gave me a list, here are all the books, work with your kid, and I pre-selected, and I'm talking to her about it. But so I think that's the disconnect with the parents, you know, are trying to explain to you guys. I don't want to feel like we're throwing darts at you, because I think you guys are sitting in a very difficult position and you're trying to represent us. And I think everybody's just somewhat frustrated.
We're not feeling that way. Keep
Okay,
going.
I'm happy, because I feel like some parents, you know, feel that way. But I think just being an open discussion and having transparency both ways, and it might be a federal new list that's coming in. And if so be it, then okay, that might be the case, but we may not agree with it. Do we have room to change it? Is it something that we can do? Same thing with, you know, vaccination for teachers. Listen, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I'm also not a pro-mandate. And I think it should be a personal choice on everything, on mask, on vaccine, on whatever. And I don't think it needs to be broadcasted. So is that something that we're doing in the district because it's a federal mandate? Is it a state mandate? Is it just the board decided unanimously that perhaps the teacher should have it? I mean, I don't feel like my kid needs to be in a class with a vaccinated child. Teacher.
Just on that specific point, the teachers and staff being vaccinated and or testing on a weekly basis, state mandate.
State mandate.
Yes.
Okay. And if they don't comply, they need to be tested.
Yes, if they don't get the vaccine, then they can be tested once
Okay, and
once
do
a
we
week.
have a plan B? Perhaps if there be faculty that decide to quit, are we going to have a shortage of teachers? Do we have a plan B for that?
It is vaccinate or get tested weekly. We're given a couple of options on how to get tested. We are not sensing that there's going to be that group that refuses both of those, and we're trying to accommodate people. So I don't want to answer that hypothetical, and I hope you understand. We would deal
No, I
with
do.
it,
I
and we would deal with
understand.
it with the Federation, and of course, the board would know. But thus far, people have understood that this is a mandate, and they're obligated to do it.
Okay, thank you
Okay.
very much.
You're
And just in
welcome.
I
Thank
just
you for
want
being
to
here.
address two of the things you said. So in terms of the question of bringing those personal beliefs, I think we all agree should not be part of what is taught. But at some point, probably in the later years, if you're discussing history, you're discussing civil rights movement, certainly part of these things will come up. If you're learning history, you're learning these things. And so that is, again, one of those things that we do struggle with, but it is important to bring those kids, knowing to bring that to our kids as part of the education. But one of the things you mentioned about what's going on in the different classes is actually work that I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but the administration has been working on developing very clear curriculum maps that will be able to show, and I'm not sure if they're quite ready for publication yet, Chris. You want to talk about that just a second?
Sure. Yeah. So we started this before COVID, and we called it the Curriculum Transparency Project, and it's basically a map for almost every class, every grade level, that really summarizes, what's in the curriculum. So we're hoping the next few weeks to get it out. We're building a website that'll be linked to our website, but it'll be easy to navigate. And then along with that, we do want to create opportunities. I did talk to the directors about that after our meeting with Dr. Dolan and they're eager to do that. They really do want to, they kind of always work behind the scenes, but they want to be out more and have those conversations.
That's great.
Yeah, I think just as a follow up to that, I've seen it. We've seen it behind the scenes. It's not yet ready for public. It's awesome. It's detailed. It's thorough. But I also want to say, pursuant to what we're talking about in general, as great as it is on the website, we need to pull people in. We need to push it out to people so they can see it, because posting stuff on the web, as we all know, but that's part of this conversation. But I thought it's important to acknowledge it publicly. Just because we have this great thing on the website doesn't mean that's the full job, even though it's the big part of the job, or at least that first part of the job, which I'm thrilled that you're doing. I think it looks great. I think people will like it. But how we go about doing that, we used to have parent university. I remember Dr. Banhar came and went to Glenwood Landing and taught all the adults the math that the kids. That was fantastic. I went home and I was like dividing up beans on my counter and different color. It was great. Literally, I was trying to explain what we were doing there, and I learned in an hour. And I was like, "Oh, this all makes sense. There's no new math, old math.
It's
I could
just
go
math.
into it." But I think the more we can do things like that, those are helpful. Those bring people in. Those show people. Those demystify and reduce those walls. So thank you.
No, and I just to get back to your, discussions on civil rights and all of that, I think when it gets to a high school level, I understand, but sixth grade, seventh grade, when you come in with your opinion on your shirt, I feel like to some kids at that age, it's very intimidated. Then they feel intimidating to then come up with your own voice,
I agree. I'm not an educator,
but I agree. It's
yeah.
fact and history, and I'm all for it.
Yeah. The middle school in particular, you see those sixth grade, again, my kids are in eighth and ninth, so I see them very clearly. Some of those sixth graders are babies and some of the eighth graders are men and women. And like,
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately. Thank you.
Hi, Tony Karen Glenhead. I did not have a speech prepared because I actually spoke to Dave last night at the middle school meeting. But I just wanted to ask Marianne, I don't know, can I ask her? Can I ask you?
ask me.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted to know if she got any information in regards to the medical director, if that information was put out, given back to
Yeah.
her.
Dr. Dolan?
I was asked to follow up on it, so if you don't mind,
Sure.
I'll be
No, of
happy to.
course.
Our medical director, the concern that was raised at the last meeting was that he was not interacting with parents. Since then, I've had 2 meetings with our medical director, both of which the medical director agreed he would reach out to that physician, that pediatrician, and have a conference with them, and he did. There was another example where our medical director had denied something, and the parent appealed it, and he said, "Okay, here, get this instead." And that request was made to the parent. So he has been fully interactive and he's made it clear. And he has stated, yes, of course, he would be available for district meetings, for example, if he needed to meet at the district or to meet with another physician.
Okay, perfect. Because I was just going through my old emails and I just found that there was an email correspondence between myself and Dr. Rufa regarding a medical exemption for my son. And I had the information here from who our old medical director was. I can give it to Betty. You guys can all have a look at it just so you could see that it was on the paperwork at some point. So I don't know what happened, but it was there as of May this year. So thank you. And I appreciate all the things that you said, Marianne, because I feel like I'm echoing, you're hearing us. And for me, the biggest thing was, and I had said to you last night, the lack of feedback, the lack of engagement from you guys. It's not necessarily from us. If I'm up here saying to you, or if I see you at a meeting, I want some feedback. I would like a conversation. Olivia mentioned maybe at the superintendent's coffee talk, that maybe a more informal situation. We can go back to that, what you used to have. I think that's a fantastic idea. People don't really want to come up here and talk. I hate public speaking. My voice is like cricky. It's
I don't think it's your voice. I think the guy is behind you with like a replacement mic.
so for me, I would be more apt to go to something like that. And I feel like it's more of an intimate situation and you could have a conversation and you don't have to feel like you're so like in the spotlight.
The interactivity that this format does not allow is clearly something that we need to find multiple ways to be able to have. Last night, I think was a good example of that.
I agree. I think it worked out really well last night.
Good.
And I love the whole light the speech that you did. Like I said to you, put it on TikTok, like somebody mentioned before about the new TikTok, which is not so new. I thought that was a great idea. So thank you.
Thank you. Are we swapping out? Thank you. Other folks who wanted to come up and speak? We're almost ready for you. No rush. We're cool.
Check 1, 2.
Thank you.
Hello, Kristen Alanya, Glenhead. Again, I wasn't planning on speaking tonight. Funny how things happen. But when you were previously talking about mandates and the teachers being mandated by the state, it made me recall about maybe 4 meetings ago. And you said, at this point, we're not ready to advocate for our kids. Maybe come September, October, we'll be there. So now we have issues, including the masks, but way bigger than masks. To go to school that they have a 99.9% survival rate for. And I'd like to know, when are you going to advocate? I mean, at what point are we just going to keep following blindly the mandate, and not actually fight for our kids like the other districts are doing? Locust Valley and Massapequa and many other districts have joined them. Why are you guys not fighting? And why do civil rights not matter to you? Because what are we teaching our kids right now?
So I can answer that question, and it is not going to be an answer you're going to like, but I hope that this is one of those answers that we can at least respect that we disagree on this. This board presently is not prepared to advocate for the removal of the mask mandate because this board does not feel that that is the appropriate move at this time for the overall health and safety of our students and based on the overall sense of the community. That is what we feel. We could be wrong. We might not agree. We don't know. We haven't, again, tested every single person, not tested, bad word, surveyed every single person to find out what they actually believe. But that is the position of the board. It is not what you want to hear. But I guess if we haven't been clear enough about it, I think it is
know,
important.
I understand that, but there are bigger things coming. And the way that you just spoke about, oh, it's a mandate. The teachers have to make a choice. I don't think that's okay. And I think that many parents agree with me, and that this is coming very quickly for our students. The bill's on the table. I'm sure you already know that. When Albany goes back into session in January, it's probably going to be pushed through in the blink of an eye. So my question is, at what point will you fight for our kids?
So regarding the teacher and staff mandate, I think, again, if they have the option of not being vaccinated, I don't know that the testing is something that the board has felt is onerous. And we can bring it up even tonight and talk about it as a board, not in, again, this format, but I don't think that's been something that we have found. I mean, I don't know, Tom, if we've had faculty who've expressed, I'm sure people don't like the invasiveness of it, some folks, but have any expressed that they feel like this is existential for their career?
Survey goes out tomorrow.
Okay.
I believe Chris is going to press a button on his computer tomorrow, and we're going to survey the staff on who's willing to get vaccinated, who would prefer testing at the school site, and who prefer independent testing. So we'll have data next week.
Okay. I will tell you this. I believe that the board does recognize, regardless, we don't want to talk in hypotheticals, but I think it's pretty clear this board does recognize that in terms of parent concern and in terms of the actuality of things, there certainly is a difference between wearing a mask and having a forced vaccination. That doesn't speak to anything that's happening, doesn't speak to how we feel about potential mandates, doesn't speak to what's going on in the political or medical sphere. But I don't think you should think that this board is a rubber stamp necessarily for all these things and doesn't think about them. We certainly have heard first of all, we've heard a couple things. Number one, we have heard that some students have a very difficult time with these masks, and it has become difficult for their learning, has become difficult for their welfare, and has become difficult for their health and just their ability to grow. And it's not good to hear. And we do hear those things. We also have heard the concern that you have expressed, others have expressed, about potentiality of coming mandates has come around in the talks. You know, as far as I know right now, there's been a non-published, non-peer-reviewed test for 5 to 11, but certainly everything is creeping in that direction. Just by the nature of the world, pharmaceutical companies certainly have, you know, they want people to be vaccinated, and there are lots of reasons for that. Public health, there's certainly a part of it. It doesn't necessarily mean that their public health is not there, and we are not in the position to be able to make that determination. But I think it's important for us to say we're not blind to all these factors, and we're aware of what, you know, of what goes on. But that's also a very tricky spot for a school board. I understand what you want us to do. I understand some school boards are doing that, but I do believe that the same way we talk about the politicization of our faculty is not a good thing. These school boards, when we all run for office, we're not Democrats or Republicans, and the politicization of this school board in that way. But I think to some degree it would be stepping into an area that none of us.
She's not coming on the mic. You can't hear it.
Okay.
I don't know who that
better?
was, but thank you. Oh, Andrea, thank you.
It's bigger than masks. Obviously, this is like life altering potentially. So this is something that, you know, a lot of us that are very against masks, who have kids with issues with masks, have pushed forward and said, we still want our kids to be in school, even though we don't agree with it. But this is much, much bigger than that. And I don't think it's political to advocate for the bill to be voted down. It should be a parent choice. It's very simple. You know, there's no reason for there to be no advocacy from our district. I think that we need all the advocacy we can get for this serious of an issue.
I hear what you're saying. And I respect that view. I also hope I'm not wading too far in saying that I hope you also recognize that there are others that do disagree with that. Even fundamental things like that, there is disagreement on these issues. And that might be a reason why the board is not prepared to step into it in that way.
Can I just say something, because I'm a lawyer?
Sure.
So there was a challenge in New York City to the mandate for vaccination and testing for teachers. That challenge to the mandate was denied. Whatever comes out of whatever Locust Valley or Massapequa filed, if it's not limited, whatever ruling comes
I
out
know.
to the specific district. So in the event that there's a change that comes from those legal challenges, that would impact what we do here. The question is, are you know, these are, you know, public funds, and if is this something that we believe is going to be successful? Is it something our attorneys have advised us to do? You know, I don't speak for the board, I speak for me. If there is a challenge that is out there that would potentially be binding, which legal precedent is binding, I don't really see a necessity to file another lawsuit, even if that's the way we felt. But there, you know, it is a use of public funds, right? And you got to be prudent in spending public funds. So just from a legal perspective, just so you know that whatever comes out of these challenges would be binding. And you could see from what happened in New York City that it's not likely that a challenge to those mandates is going to be successful.
And let me just be clear also, Marianne, those are good points, Marianne and I have served together, and I have a tremendous respect for her legal background, as much as no one should have any respect for anything I say about legal, because I'm not a lawyer. But I just want to be also clear that whatever happens over there, I just want to say, could potentially
No,
affect
I'm aware. I am aware of that.
what
Yeah, there are
happens here.
also other challenges besides the New York City one, like with the nurses and the doctors that are still ongoing. So there's going to be a lot of challenges. And clearly, if this hits down to our kids, there's going to be tons of challenges. I think it's just disturbing to me that I don't feel that anyone feels the need to advocate. And I think to a lot of parents, actually.
I think that is clear, and we hear that. We would never ask you to change the way you believe about those things, and I'm certainly would invite you to keep coming and telling us how you feel.
Okay, thank you.
Natasha Gordon Seacliff. Just to speak to what Marianne was saying earlier, there is still a president's meeting every month. And I co-chair the coordinating council for all the various parent organizations. And we meet with Dr. Dolan every month and share information among ourselves, and he get updates from him, and also communicate to him when there are issues in our buildings that we believe he should know about. So there is sort of a system already in place for that. I think and that speaks just to parent engagement, not community as a whole. So that's a whole other piece of things. But I would encourage everybody to know who their parent organization groups are, and when they have concerns or issues to communicate them, because we do have a forum directly with Dr. Dolan every month where we sit for 2.5 hours usually and talk through all of these things. And so that does exist right now. And maybe there should be a designated person on each board who is a liaison to the community for that purpose. And that's something that we could put on the agenda for the next meeting. But I also love the idea of the town hall meetings, and also of the like volunteer fair that Andrew was talking about, like what we did today at the middle school, where people can come and figure out what the opportunities are and how to volunteer. Because I think a lot of people don't know how to get involved. I mean, I got recruited when the first month I moved here, because I showed up for a meeting, and apparently that was a big deal. People don't show up for meetings. So I would encourage people to show up for meetings and to pay attention to what's going on. I think the Zoom has been great. I feel like way more people are commenting to me that they've been watching the meetings. Attendance is even up here. I mean, it could be a lot better, but so I mean, I think you're headed in the right direction. And I think the meetings that we've been doing with you have been terrific in terms of the Q&A that's going back and forth, because a lot of people, I think, just don't know what to ask or aren't sure how to pose their questions.
I agree. They've been great. I appreciate the invitation you've extended to me to all those groups. I appreciate how welcoming they have been, for what it's worth. I appreciate how welcoming the principals of the buildings have been in coordinating with me. And again, my old softball days, navigating the weather, whether we're indoors or outdoors or where we are and what time. It's been great. But even the coordinating council meeting that I attended, that was rollicking. I mean, we spent some time hashing things out and realizing there's a lot of different opinions here. But I think we left at a much better place, more together than when we came in that room.
Absolutely.
And so that's the goal.
And that's what I was thinking coming out of, I mean, I've attended 2 of those meetings now with you, and thinking about how those meetings can happen more in this kind of a setting. And maybe the town halls are that, where you are free to answer questions without necessarily committing to speaking for every single board member, but just to be informative. And I think that's terrific. I mean, it's great that you're volunteering your time to do that. I am constantly blown away by how much time you guys volunteer for this and put into this. It's crazy. And I actually would say, just to offer a different point of view from what you just said, I'm very grateful that, I mean, I sat in that August meeting where people were giving you research pro-mask and research against masks. And I just sat there thinking it's really unfair that you as a group, I mean, you're all intelligent, educated people, but this is not your area. And for you to have to sit there and read 600 pages of this and 600 pages of that, and then make a decision seems really unfair for us to ask you to do that, for the state to ask you to do that. Like, there are people who are professionals, and I think it's fair for you to follow their advice and not have opinions of your own. I mean, you can have personal opinions, but as a board. So I'm grateful that the governor did make a decision that sort of took that off of your plate, because you guys work hard enough, I think. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I thank you. I would say it certainly is what we signed up for. And just as the president of this board, I want to mention I do appreciate my fellow trustees. This is a universally hardworking bunch of people. They do the research. They come prepared. We work together. We sat here in our executive session trying to schedule something with our calendars, and these are, busy people.
And it's not even budget
we're-
time. I mean, you guys get those budget binders. I mean, I've sat through all the public budget meetings, and the way that you come prepared for those is very impressive.
Thank you. I appreciate my fellow
So, I mean,
trustees.
it's
very-
hard. I
very
think it's
much.
very hard to engage the community when, I mean, how much they want to be engaged is a difficult question, I think. I think you had a lot of coffee talks that were much more informal than this, and very few people showed up.
But people are showing up. You see me typing here. Dr. Dolan is not typing, but he's going to need another book. This is extremely helpful tonight. Going around and meeting with the groups is helpful. Hearing what people have to say is really helpful to me.
Yeah, I think
and
there've
to
been
the
some
board.
great ideas tonight.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Cashman from Seacliff. I have some back of the envelope stuff. Some of the, regarding communication, some of the things are a little bit echoes, but of things that are already said, but I just wanted to highlight a little bit of a different piece of them. Also have to echo that I was fortunate enough to sit through 2 of your presentations, and what people are saying in front of your face is true, but also they're saying it behind your back in the parking lots, that it was super helpful and they got a lot out of it. So wanted to give you that little bit of info. I wanted to talk in terms of communication about the whys of it. Something that Trustee Russo mentioned was like when we pivoted to earlier foreign language. And the reason is because it's evidence-based, like kids learn better when they're younger. It wasn't like, hey, we like Chinese and we want to kind of hang out in China more. So I think to the extent that we can explain the whys of some of these choices and decisions, it really helps. Like at a previous meeting, somebody said, when I understood that kids can stay in school when they're masked and 3 feet away in the event of an exposure, that was a light bulb moment for me. That why is really important in that realm. So I just kind of wanted to add that piece to the puzzle, and then we get into the budget, which is its own behemoth. And so much of because it's so confusing, it's such a target for people to spread misinformation. So I wanted to echo, like, to stress how important I think it is that we involve people in at any, like, you guys are educated, not the board, but Dr. Dolan and, Dr. Zuglionis, like, I guess the community is really looking for some education. And I know I am. I miss my parent university so badly. I'm struggling in 3rd grade math again. It's a problem. So what's that? Yeah, thanks. So, and now I have a 6th grader, so it's become even more dire for me. I know she's doing things with trapezoids. I don't know how to navigate that with her. So, also with the budget, I think a big piece of what comes up and has come up historically is like our comparison to other schools. And people, we are a small district relatively. We have expenses and mandates. And so our cost per student is going to be high. But understanding the value that we bring to the table, it seems like there's been a hesitancy to kind of understand like some of these important things and why our teachers are so highly rated in the state and in the nation. Actually, It's because they're so highly educated. It's because we're, you know, we're investing in our teachers. And those kinds of differences are really important. I mean, I spend so much time on Facebook during budget season trying to like explain these things, but it doesn't help if it's not like a part of the vernacular of what we talk about in terms of what we value and where our money goes. And so that goes back to, you know, my whys, but I just, you know, the comparison to other districts comes up all the time. I will echo that it has to be concise and engaging and short. You know, we can't like put it all in one email as much as we'd love to try. And I don't have an answer necessarily to the hows, although a previous parent who doesn't look like she's here anymore brought up the idea of the parent representatives in the building. And I loved the idea, but what I love about it is you guys can't serve forever. And so to engage people in the buildings in a more systematic, more regulated kind of way and create kind of a bench for people who could take over the roles of the board. And that seems really useful to me. And if we create kind of like a function, like a feeder, like an academy where you're spending time learning about how the board functions and communicating with the public and understanding the pressures and like the kind of listening that you have to do, that seems like a really good thing to invest our time into creating. So I hadn't thought about it until she mentioned it, but you know, I think that seems like a great idea for that reason. What else? Oh, the misinformation thing. My personal opinion is I would love to, we have lawyers, I would love to see the misinformation addressed more offensively. Like if people are going to go on the record and publicly lie and defame the schools and the intentions behind the trustees, I feel that there needs to be more accountability, and you can't just go on and on for years lying. It's so frustrating. And it's damaging, materially damaging, as evidenced by our recent budget vote. So I would implore you to use all, I've said it, I'm on the record during quarantine for writing it. I'm here to say it verbally. Use all the mechanisms at your disposal to defend our schools from lies, because, you know, my youngest is only in the 3rd grade. Like, we got to keep this upward trajectory for, you know, at least as long as my own children are here. I'm joking. I want it for the community, obviously. Address the lies. Oh, another thought, and this was touched on before, but to bring the schools into the community and the community into the schools. We did a little bit with the art walk last spring, but you know, to the extent that we can get the power of performance, the extent that we can get our kids performing in the public and get people in our schools a bigger emphasis and a more robust, you know, I know that there's an educational component, a community educational component in our schools, but it's kind of stale. Like it's kind of maybe to freshen that up and to make it more exciting and to develop that into more robust asset to the community and something that you could come and take yoga, you know, or all the things that are interesting in the community, use the teachers at our disposal who are award winning, if that's in their contracts to be able to do, I don't even know. But to bring people into our schools and to be able to be educating beyond the, you know, K through 12 that we are mandated, I think that could really understand the value better. So to the extent that we can have that interplay and build it more robustly and systematically, I think it would serve us. Where else am I? I'm sorry. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I think those are I have a couple other points, but they're not related to communication.
Okay, we don't want to go, we want to kind of move towards.
Okay, fine. So unrelated to communication, related to the COVID shutdown, I've gotten some hints. I'm on a PCA board and I'm involved in other activities. Dr. Dolan, I've gotten the idea that maybe there's going to be a change in policy. We've shut down everything for fall in terms of fundraising and events, even outdoor, indoor. If I've gotten a hint that maybe a whisper that something could be okay in October for the event wise, if that's going to be the case and you communicate that down to the PCA so that we can get a little runway to do like an outdoor movie, God forbid, or something, it would be helpful to know sooner rather than later, even if you change your mind, to create the mechanism to be able to do that, because right now we don't have anything in the funnel and I'm sure you've heard from the PCAs, the fundraising is an issue. So if you're considering changing it for one person, please make sure all the buildings know that. And then lastly, and I don't mean to be contrarian, but I know that you've heard some really passionate arguments against like the future vaccines and the children's, and I know that people feel very, very strongly about this. For the record, I would just like to state that I don't feel that medical decisions and whether we should protect our kids from medical decisions, like I'm okay with the vaccines and I feel that that's useful. I'm not saying other parents have to be okay with vaccines, but I wouldn't expect a board of what I consider my peers scholastically, like nobody on that board that I know of is a doctor, to make those choices for our kids. Whether the state mandates it or not, I would be shocked if it does, but we are mandated for many, many, many vaccines for the public safety. So I'm sorry, I know that this is not in agreement with everyone in this room, but I had to state for the record that I feel like we need to just follow the law, however that falls. Thanks for listening. Sorry it was so long.
Just want to correct one thing.
Yes.
In my example, I was not arguing for or against flush.
No,
I
of
think
course
I made that clear. What I said was we didn't follow up. And you used it as an example where we could have followed up. I just want to be clear.
And I just wanted to echo that I use the example as the why in terms of like, that's it.
I understand that, but I think a couple of comments.
It was a good example to use. I
So
understood what
yeah,
you're making.
I wanted to pick up on something else. And I appreciate those comments, Lisa. Thank you. You mentioned the whys, the whys, the whys. The question is the hows, community engagement. Just as an example, not by himself, but Trustee Galati helped organize an incredibly moving ceremony to commemorate 9/11 on this Friday before 9/11 on September 10th. It was done on the 10th because faculty were here, people were here. It was a school day. Saturday could be even tougher to bring people together. Students spoke, students played, politicians spoke, people from the school community showed up. Two trumpeters played one of the most moving taps renditions that I've heard, and coming from two students. It's tough to get people to come.
Dave, you know that I know about this stuff and I did not know about that event.
Yeah, I mean, Rich, that was a great day.
I'm so sorry
for
to
the
hear about
schools.
it because
There was a rededication of a plaque. And so again, we are still figuring out the how, but that's a huge part. We want to engage. We want to have people there. Believe it, there were, as wonderful as the day was, the empty seats was, you know,
yeah,
we were rueful
I'm
about that.
sure.
But I appreciate you bringing up the how also. Thank you. Other public comment before we move on to our regular business. All right, I appreciate everyone coming tonight. You're certainly welcome to stay for the rest of the night, but we're going to move on to our regular business. Just switch over my window here. And we're going to jump right in if that's okay with everyone. With action 7, which is the appointment of a records access officer. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Andrew. You're back. Good. Action 8, which is a series of personnel actions we're going to take together, if that's okay. Is there a motion on 8A through Q? Motion from Rich. Is there a second? Second from Lisa Colasiopa. Are there any questions or comments? All in favor of action item 8? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Number 9 and 10. Actions 9 and 10 will take together approval of a resolution regarding the retention and disposition schedule of records and a resolution regarding ballots. Is there a motion on 9 and 10?
Motion.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Action 11, adoption of district goals. Is there a motion to open comment? Sorry, is there a motion on the action item? And a second?
Second.
Okay, questions or comments? I think we will have some on this one. Okay. Trustee Jones, you had some. You want to start?
Sure. On the goal on student engagement, I'm looking for my copy. It's goal 4. Here, and I think we've talked about this a little bit before, where it's really praised as continuing research And we've talked about how we really have multiple years of data at this point. And I think we want the goal to really some kind of action plan. Maybe it could be something along the lines of that we have an action plan by X date, that we would implement some portion by Y. I think they'll probably, these committees have been meeting, there's been a lot of work done. I think there's probably things that we can put into place, plan to put into place quickly. But I think there's probably stuff that's also very school year dependent. Like, let's say you needed, I'm just going to make something up, a new course, right? Like, obviously that's not going to happen until next year, but we wanted to have it in place so that it could happen next year. Go around not just research, but around consolidating what the work of the committee and have been into things we can do, propose to do now, place so that can happen next year, and having a couple of date steps in between about when we would hear what those things would be and when we could get them accomplished would be more appropriate at this time.
Let me develop, get a sense of the plan. If you look back at the first iteration of these goals, they were very different. And I listened to the board carefully and I tried to incorporate as much as I could. We didn't have to change the font, but we came close. We've got a lot more on here than we did in the first iteration. So here's the juncture. We could try to develop the very specific language that you're talking about tonight as a group, which is hard sometimes, and adopt the amended goals tonight. Or I could take careful notes again, and then we could adopt the goals on October the 7th. I just want to know which direction the board wants to go tonight.
Either is fine with me as long as, we could agree to like some sort of framework to talk about October 7th, that like by this date, there'll be some proposed actions and et cetera, et cetera.
I think what you're saying, Sarah, is that I'm not throwing it out there, but say October 1, I don't know what date that is, that we had a revised vision from Dr. Dolan based on the comments that we accrued tonight, and that was an opportunity for trustees either to say this is great, or this comment should be here, or there should be small additional changes, or that didn't catch what I was saying. So we could at least have a revised on a one-to-one basis that doesn't violate open meeting laws, but would allow us to then come together and discuss a revised set of goals that made sense for everyone based on their input that we could all agree on October 7th. My caveat would be, I don't want to lose time. Does anybody need to lose time? Like one of these we've already achieved.
I mean, I'm hoping we'll end up with a goal that says that like the board will hear a proposed set of actions by this date during this year, right? That we can discuss and that these things will be put into place.
Would it
Do you think that's really part of the goal that we have
Not the
that-
specific actions, but that there will be actions, not research, but steps taken towards improving student engagement, that they will be in agreement about what it is we will actually do.
don't you think we adopt the goals and then we have discussions as to how those goals are implemented? To me, that's an implementation, not an adoption of the goals. I don't want to get lost in the minutia and the goals, because I want this to be something that's already gotten very long. I want this something for the district, for the community to go on the website, look at, be one page, and then we can do implementation plans for each of the goals that we have as if it's dates, if it's specific steps we want to take. I'm not sure that really should be in the document that's talking about what our overarching goals are.
That's an extremely fair point. But I think the goal is phrased on this document has to move away from research that we've done for the past 4 years and has to be about doing something.
I think that specific change, sorry, Tommy, you have to speak, could be fixed right now.
I think I could do that. And I have a thought. In the very first bullet, the word continue is also weak because it sounds like we're just, to use a phrase I've heard, kicking the can, down the road. utilize research on the degree to which all of our students and develop an action plan. Period. And the dates can be decided upon, and that could be a part of the meeting. But it gets rid of the word continue. So we're going to use, we're up to taking that research and doing something with it. We could also say develop an action plan based on the research.
How do we feel about act on the research?
Act on.
Or
Act on the research.
Act on the research on the degree to which all of our students feel engaged, including their active engagement with school, and rely upon all previous students to inform our research in the development of an action plan.
or you could say
You could do it
develop,
easier.
yeah, develop an
Andrea?
action plan, develop an action plan based on our past research on engagement.
That's
just
where
wanna
I
be-
was going, Andrea.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. So we are not talking about acting on it. We're talking about developing the action plan. So in other words, 3 stages. We're done with the research. Now we're all, I think we're agreeing on, we're going to develop the action plan.
And then it would eventually be implement the plan.
Sarah, is that enough for you? In terms of doing it, or are you ready to
Not-
get more active this year?
Not if we're talking about, we come up with a plan that we don't even talk about implementing until the end of the year, which means it will be yet another year before you can actually do it.
So why don't we say
The
develop?
timeline
and implement?
has to be that things change between now and next year.
I think that has to be a question for our administration if they feel prepared to be able to do that. I would like us to be able to do that.
It's 4 years.
I agree, but I think it's also fair, you know, those years have been.
I think it requires. I think it's,
In many ways, now's the time to do it, right? Because there is an increasing mental health burden. There are all of these extra stresses now this year that children did not have to confront years prior when we first initially did the research. So to me, I agree with Sarah. It feels like we should be extra urgent. That doesn't mean that we implement, develop and implement everything that we have on our list, but I think we do need to have some urgency here.
say too, I have a tremendous amount of faith in the committees that have been working on this. I believe that they have a lot of
I can't hear her.
beliefs about what, I know it's crap one. He gave me a new one, but he said it wouldn't be different. That we have a lot of, I think these committees are doing the work. What I'm trying to say is I have tremendous faith in what's been going on within our schools. I have tremendous concern. Administrators said, like, no, we haven't made any progress, we're not really ready to make changes. And that's important to do. Like, we're not asking for change for the sake of change. What we're trying to do is support the people that have been working on this for several years now to say, like, yes, let's get these changes done in a timely manner so they're actually in place.
I think the stagnation that we feel and that Sarah's expressing, I think is fair. I think the importance and the urgency is something upon which we're all in agreement. So I think there's that desire to, well, the good side is you can combine the first 3 bullet points if you're going to do this. You can use a larger font again.
It's funny because I did just change the second bullet.
Okay.
So here's what I have so far. Develop an action plan relying upon our research on the degree to which all of our students feel engaged and the rest of it. The second bullet, address how engagement among students can be enhanced. Not research, but address can be enhanced and apply what we learn to our academic community.
I don't think you need that. I don't think it says much, and I think it's captured in the first one.
Okay. That's Dave's thought of when in doubt, cut it out. How about the third one? That was, and anything you see on here that's new is something I heard the other night. I don't want you to think I was.
I think if you add the clause inside and outside of the classroom.
To
whatever
the
else
first
you're
one?
doing, then you can-
Yes, yeah.
You give me a motto, I think I like it.
Cut it out, yeah. So I think I got it. What about goal, the first bullet being develop an action plan relying upon the research, our research on the degree to which all of our students feel engaged, both inside and outside the classroom, including their active engagement with school, and rely upon our all previous studies to inform our research and action. Should have written it down.
You should have.
No, I got it.
I mean, I think, I don't know, I mean, that seemed pretty long.
I think there's a tape.
It is kind of long, but
But if I can make it even longer, I mean, we could reference the work of our school committees.
I think that's
The work
implicit.
been ongoing.
I think that's implicit. The only thing I would, well, unless you think it should be explicit. So I'm offering a counterpoint, but I think it needs to be part of what we're doing. But I do agree that goals are aspirational and they're big. They're achievable for us, but they are not strategy or tactics. I would also say, Tom, as long as you did write it down,
I did.
including their active engagement with school, comma, inside and outside the classroom, comma, and then you can delete the previous clause, which made it clunkier.
Got it. I know right where to go. Yes. So since you're going to be maybe voting on this tonight, let's make sure everybody's got the same. I have develop an action.
Hold on, we're
plan.
talking about real experts in here. Betty, you're ready to go to be able to read? Okay, I want to make sure that Betty's, because
Betty
you
and
are
I-
the
Betty and I-
one who's going to be best at
Betty
this.
and I will, Betty knows that she deciphered some incredible notes on the, or I deciphered and summarized for her, and she was able to put it together. So the first bullet would be, develop an action plan relying upon our research on the degree to which all of our students feel engaged, including their active engagement with school, comma, both inside and outside of school, still a little clunky, and rely upon all previous studies to inform our research. I got it. Their active engagement inside and outside of school. Yeah, that's scary.
I would, instead of saying our research, I would say past research, because we're really looking to integrate scientific research, right, with our own sort of survey findings. I can't hear you, Sarah.
And the work of our committees.
Yes.
So I think you could probably just pull it down, the mic down a little bit, Sarah. Oh, being on is
It
also
wasn't
key.
on before. When I pull it down, we get the correct list.
Oh,
But,
Andrea, what's your modifier before research?
I
All
would say
research?
past, no, past research.
Past, got it.
I feel like we need to see this in writing before we vote, but I might be in the minority.
I would say I personally could hear it read back one more time and feel confident.
Well, and I think it also depend on how many other edits we make tonight. If there's a number of other edits, you might need to see it in writing.
Do we feel good about this one now?
Are we talking about this? Are we including everything else that's down here? What are we striking?
Bullet 2 and bullet 3.
Okay, so I have explore the relationship between our students, research the role of grading policies play in impacting our students' mental health. I don't think that really belongs here because I think grading policy should be a separate category that brings a study of our grading policy should be outside of this goal. That is a whole nother can of worms that takes in a whole bunch of other factors, would involve our administrators. It would involve our guidance. I just think grading policy is its own separate animal and doesn't belong on a goal that is talking about student engagement, because
I'd go further that the last 3 bullets, or maybe all of the other bullets besides the one that we're talking about, are too specific for the goal.
Yes.
The goal is just the one bullet. You capitalize on the past research and the work of the committees and implement things that improve student engagement, period, the end.
Right.
I'm
And that also, these 3 bullets also bring in going back to research. So I think we were talking about developing action plans.
I'm okay with that, though I do think it's important that the phrase mental health is in there because mental health is intrinsically linked to engagement.
I'm not against it, but I mean, all the research should support that. Like, if we feel like it's helpful in some reason to just sort of reiterate it.
I don't know. I agree with, I think these last 3 are way too specific. And I think that the study talks about mental health that we did. It talks about depression. It talks about anxiety. I mean, honestly, mental health could be its own separate category outside of student engagement. How do we improve mental health? I mean, I think it's an overarching theme. If you're talking about curriculum, if you're talking about anything, I think you would bring in student mental health into the equation. I don't think it needs to be specifically enumerated.
So I'm hearing that we're reduced to 1 bullet, which is fine. And just to be, I think I've said this before, lest anybody think I was trying to hijack these goals, anything you see here, I heard the other night, and thought, put it there.
I don't think anyone feels hijacked. I think this is the process.
Okay,
I think
all
we're
right.
good, Tom.
Okay.
I would just say that since I've been on this board, I've been talking about grading practices. I think that
I can't hear it. There's somebody who's not, I can't hear.
there's a few kinks tonight. Hopefully people can hear us out there. I mean, Andrea, no?
Speak one more time. Yeah, nobody can, I can't hear anything now.
Can I ask a question?
I can hear Lisa.
Oh,
No.
maybe it's Dave's microphone. So I agree about, making this more broad and removing those last 3 bullets, as long as we still, make sure that obviously we're, paying attention to these things. And maybe it's already implicit, but just given the community and what we've heard about special education, do we need to, or should we, and I know this is for all students, obviously we're including special education. I don't know if we need to put it in there somewhere, but I just thought, should we say including special education? Or is it, is it already implied?
Why would we pick out one
I
particular
mean, just
group?
for all students, all of our students, comma, including, or is
No,
that
I
too
think it's
specific?
good. Students are our student population as
Right.
much as any other student
I think it's
population.
good for our conversation, though.
Okay.
Like, it's absolutely appropriate for our conversation to say, while we're all talking about this and speaking with the people that will be working on this, to be like, let's be clear, we really mean all students. We're concerned about special education students and everyone else. So it's good for the
Okay.
conversation.
Andrea, testing, can you hear me?
I can hear you guys. My guess is maybe it's because you're not putting on the microphone. See, now I can't hear. And it's not just me. Other people are, whoever's watching from home, that they can't hear either. It's David. It's your microphone.
You want
Andrea,
my
who
microphone?
can
Let's
hear?
just switch.
but I have to have people in the community. I mean, I'm.
Now I can hear you.
Okay, so let's not touch anything. I'll just stay on. You can hear me now. I touched it. As I said, I wasn't going to touch it. You can hear me, Andrea?
I can, loud and clear.
So let's return to this discussion. Thank you. All I was going to say, Andrea, I want to make sure you can hear it, is that grading and the effective grading and the way that we're grading, I think is worthy of an entire bullet in a future year by itself. It's a gigantic topic.
Are we done with 4? Because I do have a comment on 2.
I think we're done with 4. We have 1 bullet under 4, the language that I read before. Betty and I can compare notes later. So yes, we have a 4 that could be adopted tonight.
Okay, so 2, do we need, I don't understand why we have that last, the negotiate successor agreement with bargaining units under the analysis of the instructional programs.
Me neither.
I don't know how that got in there.
It has been there every year under this goal for the last 4 years.
I don't think it's necessary.
Inertia, that's how it got there.
Can we take it out? Thank you. It has nothing to do with this goal.
The goals?
Andrea, do you have any more comments on the goals?
On the goals, I guess on goal 1, you only have, in the whole document, there's only one, what would you call it? Like indent, provide the community with regular updates as the search goes on. So I think maybe we can just incorporate that, engage the community through the search firm, find ways to seek input from all constituencies, and provide the community with regular updates as the search progresses. Get rid of that hanging preposition. There's no sound again.
They're just working on the microphone.
All right.
Okay.
Andrea, I got that one and I heard no objections.
All right.
There's also, I mean, this is really, really minor, but some of the bullets have periods and some don't, just very minor.
Okay, maybe it was the wind behind me, Andrea.
I don't know.
So. Really clear what it means, determine the opportunity, cost, and the actual cost. That's supposed to be opportunity cost. Okay.
Right, it is. I'm sorry, there's an extraneous comment in
Okay,
there.
sorry.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
No, it's
Let's
okay. I
determine
wasn't-
the opportunity cost and actual cost.
Okay.
Thanks.
There's 2 extra commas. Determine the opportunity cost and actual costs associated. You don't need either of those commas.
The first one is definitely a mistake. Should not have been there at all. The second one, I know grammarians debate that all the time. What's it called?
No, that
The
is not.
Oxford
a
comma.
I'm going to
comma.
tell you, in
That's
Catholic
just
school, there
wrong.
would not be that
It's
comma.
just wrong. Take it
Yeah,
out.
no comma, no comma.
No comma.
Okay, great. So mine's an easy one. You said there's nothing easy. Here we go. Goal 4, the third bullet, we need to pluralize students.
Goal 4 only has
Oh,
one.
we're
bullet.
taking it out.
changing it.
Great. Sorry. My notes are
I'm so sorry.
antiquated.
My microphone is driving me insane. It's crackling so loudly, I can't hear what anybody is saying. Me. I can't, when I turn my microphone off, my speaker crackles so loudly, I can't hear anything.
We can only have 4 though, so we'll see how that goes. Okay. And I'm just curious never mind, because it's been removed or changed. I'm good. I'm ready to adopt unless anyone else has any other questions or comments. I think we should hear that bullet 4 once again.
No.
Develop an action plan relying upon past research on the degree to which all of our students feel engaged, including their active engagement inside and outside of school, and rely upon all previous studies to inform our research.
Develop
I'm
an
ready to
action
adopt.
plan for this year.
Yes, for this year.
What does that mean? How can we, we're gonna take the year to adopt the plan for this
year's
year?
goals.
I think that really is the crux of this whole question. Are we developing a plan this year? Or are we developing a plan by some mid-year point when they're gonna implement and see the results of in this year?
I think however we phrase it, I'm not clear about, but the goal would be that we cannot lose yet another year.
Can't we just leave the language the way Tom gave it? And then let's put on the agenda, one agenda somewhere, a discussion about how we're going to approach goal 4, because what I would really like to hear from, I'd like to hear from Dan Doherty. And I'd like to hear from other professionals in the building as to how, in the buildings, as to how we're going to do this. And get a realistic timeline as to what the proposals
Well, right,
are.
that's absolutely the goal. And so I think that's a good point to act, we can actualize it, not necessarily just in the goal by putting it on the calendar.
I think it has to be on an agenda for another event.
Sorry, Tom, I hate to say this, but your mic is not on.
I don't know how I divined this, but on the board meeting schedule and topics for discussion, which I still think is a work in progress, January 20th, 2022, student engagement, update and action plan. I already had that on.
I would never use a gavel from this seat, but if I had one, I would say sold. All right, we're good? Okay, any additional questions or comments, or can we call this to a vote?
Can we just read the fourth one more time?
No,
Yeah.
Sorry.
Of course.
no.
Of course.
Maybe if Betty read it.
I'm not kidding.
No,
I don't want to hear it again, no.
okay.
This is going to be the same. Develop an action plan relying upon past research on the degree to which all of our students feel engaged, including their active engagement inside and outside of school, and rely upon all previous studies to inform our research, period.
Okay, all right, let me just say one thing. Based upon that, we're developing a plan on which they feel engaged. Don't you want to develop a plan to improve student engagement?
Yes.
If we don't know that's implicit in the goal, what are
Okay.
we doing up here? Which may be a very fair question, but. Okay, so let's call the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, trustees. I'll move on to action item 12, which is approval of an MOA. Is there a motion? And a
Motion.
second? Thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We will move on to action item 13, approval of agreement with Advanced Cardiovascular Diagnostics. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second? Questions or comments,
I had a question.
please?
Had asked Tom in advance of the meeting as to how this particular entity was selected. We did have Northwell coming and doing testing, not the same type of testing, but voluntary testing. So I'm just curious as to what the process was and why this entity was selected.
I'm going to let Olivia give you a little bit of the history, and she worked arduously on this contract itself. So I know she knows the history.
Yeah, they were the very company that came to us last year, so there's some consistency here. They worked with us last year, and there was a lot of back and forth with Dr. Frankel because he's a district resident. He was willing to go extra mile for us, and that met our needs also. That's why he was selected. And a number of school districts are also using him. And the fact that he brought his truck here, he was very flexible. So that's why we went with him.
Great, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? Action item 13, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I'd like to combine Action items 14, 15, and 16. Agreement with Web Cola, some cooperative bids, and a photography agreement. Is there a motion on 14, 15, 16?
Motion.
And a second? I think we heard a second as well. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Action 17 and 18, special education services contracts and special ed tuition agreement. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second? Questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Action 19, special ed consultant agreements. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And I heard a second as well. Comments, questions? All in favor? Aye. Old business? New business,
New business?
please.
I might have old business. I'm. following
Oh,
the-
Mary, I'll do this. We'll come back. That's okay.
Okay.
We can come back, right? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Unless you're, yeah. Hit it, Marion.
Good.
Okay, so Chris mentioned Adasa Council. We talked about a possible parent council. And there was discussion during public comment about maybe a curriculum type committee. So I just wanted to get some information from Chris on the DASA Council.
So according to the policy on harassment and bullying, which is our DASA policy, we are supposed to have building level DASA committees as well as a district level committee. Now, the plan was I would work with the DASA coordinators to establish consistency across those buildings. I think in a similar fashion to how we have building level safety committees, it's kind of akin to that. But then we have a district level committee that the DASA coordinators would be present in, and also parent members as well.
That was my question. Now, how would the DASA Council interact with the curriculum committees? Because you do have curriculum committees, right? So
Right.
if the DASA Council is recommending that we implement some sort of programmatic changes in terms of instruction,
Right.
how would they interact with the curriculum committee to determine exactly what that would consist of and how it would be implemented in the classroom? And how would we make parents aware of those changes?
Just as a point of order, these are excellent questions, but also because it's new business, Chris, if you were prepared to answer, feel free. But also because you weren't prepared and we want to have a discussion we weren't ready for. If you wanted, we'll note the questions and come back to it. We could do that also.
Yeah, I'll give a quick like starter answer on that, and I'll have more in my next update and for the next meeting. But I think sometimes what I noticed last year with the equity committee and the teaching and learning committee is sometimes those committees interact and sometimes they are separate. I'd say in this case this year, given board goal 4, the teaching and learning committee will really be focused on engagement. And I think in this case, the DASA committee and any recommendations on needed instruction would come directly from that committee to the board and to the parents through that committee.
The reason why I'm bringing it up is because, obviously I read your report. But before I had gotten the report, I was thinking back that some of these issues at the middle school maybe could have been addressed better if we had sort of this type of committee with parent representation and talk about, we tried to address it with speakers and then that sort of took on a life of its own. And I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I didn't know how that DASA committee would interact with the curriculum committee and how we would get the work that it's doing out to the larger parent community, other than those parents who are involved. So that's new business that maybe we can talk about at the next meeting or in the next boardgram that you send out. So that was one. And the other thing for new business would be the suggestion for a parent council and how we are going to discuss that moving forward as a board. You know, is this something that the board would, you know, be interested in forming, and how would it take, what form would take, and how would it be structured?
I think that the topic, we can put it out there. I think I want to know that. I think it's great feedback we got today. I think there were a lot of good things in there. I'm glad you picked up on that, Mary Ann. Picked up the baton, not picked up on it, obviously. And I would like to, I guess, Tom, you'll take some time and not now, but
I have a thought. I'm hearing the need for an informal setting. You know, I'm hearing the need, the desire for an informal setting where the board is present, parents are present. I'm not sure how the parents would be chosen. I'm a little stuck on that one, because it seems like there are already parent leaders chosen at the building level. But let's say we can figure out a way for parents to be chosen. And I'm picturing an informal meal. I'm picturing dinner. I'm picturing a board sitting with, not spread out like this.
Secret approved tents.
Spread out outdoors, just spinning an idea here. You know, an informal event where people are sitting and having a conversation, and maybe there's a question that's posed for everybody to respond to as we go around the table. And again, this idea is about an hour and 15 minutes old, but I'm hearing the need for something informal. I'm hearing something where people can interact in a way where they could turn to their neighbor who might not be a parent, might be a board member, and say, I didn't know that. Why, what is that? What is that about? As opposed to the council that was described, which seems so formal, and I think we have already in terms of the.
I would disagree. I would disagree with you on the. Do by default bring those issues, some of the issues that are concerning parents, to the president's meeting, but that's not their role, and they are not allowed to advocate. That's really part of the national charters for some of them and in their bylaws. So I think what they were talking about was something different than the PTO. A lot of what the PTO does is they do take that information in terms of what fundraising needs to be done and how the monies need to be allocated. But I think this is a different kind, as I understood it, a different kind of council that they're talking about. And that the selection of the leaders is, you know, worrisome as well, but maybe that's really not our role. Maybe that's their role, how they pick it. And yes, I agree. They are looking for something informal, but I don't know how you do that without having a quorum and violating open meetings law and notice provisions. There's a lot in that we really need to think about in terms of, just because we call it something different doesn't mean it's legally different. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I was going to say, I think there's a model, and I'm not sure if it was like right before we started or right after we started, but I was hoping you'd remember, where there was, I think it was called like a superintendent's council, and maybe the framework at the time was to discuss other sources of revenue or something, but it was a completely noticed open community event. There was no selecting anybody. Everybody came that wanted to come. But then we did break up into rooms based on that there was a board member in every space. And the board member was just there, like, was
I
just supposed
participated
to
in
be
that,
taking
yes.
notes and consolidating the information and like bringing it back. But it was a way for, you know, lots and lots of groups of whoever wanted to participate to come and talk. And it does need it needs some framing, right, about what it is we're talking about, I think, but people liked it. A huge number of people came out. There were a lot of very good conversations.
Yeah, I do remember that, but it wasn't a regular event. We didn't do it on a regular basis.
It was like
It was a
over
series
3
of,
parts.
yeah,
2
it
or
was
3
a
parts.
series of them.
Yeah. It was a workshop to some degree where we were charged with, again, LIPA, if we were going to have some kind of large scale loss of revenue, what are some outside the box ideas? Engage in the community and what those outside the box ideas were. So meeting one was to explain it. We broke up into subgroups, came back and we're given copies of the budget. Came back with those budget copies with whatever marks and ideas we had, discussed them, and then came back a third time. I will tell you, the attendance was like gigantic, slightly less, off a cliff. But still, it's a good idea. I think, Marianne, to your point, the selection process is a tricky one because if you're dealing with a small group, people are suddenly representing ideas. That becomes very, very problematic. But I do remember the idea of an informal conversation that we're talking about. I think that is something that I'm not opposed to, but I think that detail has to be worked out. But I do remember when we were talking about elections in schools, we did have an event at the time where the board was in the cafeteria. It was a different cafeteria, different place, and we all spoke. We took questions. It was more interactive than this about a specific topic, but it allowed people to hear from us. I think the structure with which we do these things is necessary and legal, but I do think we need to look for other avenues to be able to have people see us as people who are wrestling with these ideas and have different thoughts and are not, we speak through the board president because that's what the law requires. That's what keeps us doing this in accordance with open meeting laws, but it doesn't let people really feel like they understand their board. And that's partly what we heard also tonight. And I think we need to find ways to be able, in a way that we're all comfortable, to be able to talk as individuals with the community about potentially a host of topics.
The budget coffees that we had the year where we went out to like Jim Ollie's and we were in different locations around town. They were very lightly attended. But when people did come, it was an entirely different kind of conversation.
Yes.
The conversations we had.
This
were great.
it's working. We're getting our business done, but
Right.
it's not working for the community in a way that they've clearly expressed to us.
I think, one of the other things that's interesting to me is when they say there's this disconnect between us and them. It's always interesting to me because I think, well, I live in the community. This is the only community I've ever lived in. And it makes me wonder whether they only see us as trustees, and maybe we need to do a better job sort of introducing who we are to them. When they're, special ed parents who speak about their issues with the special ed department, they often speak in a way as if we don't understand their plight. And maybe I think we could do a better job explaining how we have many of the same issues that they have. And, our children have struggles, and we've run to be on the board because all of us have had things that we wanted to change as well and can relate to them in that way. I don't know.
What, I would suggest that we put this as part of the discussion on October 7th on community engagement.
Mhm.
Hopefully, the community will get back to us as to what exactly it is they want to see. And in the interim, I think what we really need to do is have a discussion with council as to what formats these meetings with the community can take. That would not violate the open meetings law.
Yeah, give us some options.
Give us some, because I'm a little concerned about that.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Other new business, or Sarah, did you go back to old business?
Yes, can we please do all business?
Sure, go for it.
I want to discuss our schedule of topics for discussion some more. As you know, I'm very excited about January 20th discussing our action plan on student engagement. So what I wanted to ask about was that I want to be clear on what we're doing around our reports on student achievement, right? So traditionally we've had 2 on student achievement. So it's possible that we only have 1 on student achievement, or it's possible that we have 3, right? Because I'm not sure if the AP IB dual credit program thing will also cover student achievement. If we're sort of splitting it in some way across those, or if we're really trying to do all student achievement on November 18th is one issue. And then the second thing is, I wanted to suggest that it's possible that when we do report on student achievement, that this engagement lens might be a way that we want, one of the ways we want to look at student achievement.
I would say, Sarah, on the APIB, that I don't think encompasses student achievement because it's a very select group. So.
Well,
stu-
no, I get that, but I'm saying, are they carving it out of the first student achievement report? Like so it was a question for Chris, like, is it student achievement on everything except AP and IB, and then we'll do AP? I didn't turn on my microphone, I'm sorry.
So Dr. Titone and I just had an initial meeting. We're going to meet with Dr. Dolan and Mr. Contreras and formulating the research questions. We really are basing those questions on the board goals and developing supporting questions and then collecting data. So that might be in the backup, but I don't think we'd speak directly in those meetings about the APIB, about the IB AP achievement.
I think Chris is right, and we've had very preliminary conversations about this. Sarah, I'd suggest that we look at another spring meeting, and there are a couple of spring meetings that are light, and we could inject another update on student achievement later in the year. I did look back. You mentioned that there were multiple ones, and again, I only had 1 year of a model to look at. There was one last year, but we could certainly add, there's a couple of evenings in March and April. They're going to be budget heavy, but it might also be nice to get off the budget topic at that time of year and talk about student achievement. So we
And
can
when we're
certainly add
talking
that.
about student achievement, I think one of the things we have to talk about is, and I know Chris always addresses this, is the gap between special ed and regular education and achievement and closing that gap. And we have been closing that gap, but obviously there's work to be done. And I would wonder, I'm sure that this, I mean, obviously all students have suffered a certain amount of learning loss, but I would think that the special ed students have been disproportionately impacted by this. So when we're talking about student achievement, I would like to know about the not just the achievement, but the learning loss and what we're doing to correct that and how it's impacted our special ed population. And maybe that's a separate topic. I don't know.
Tom, were you able to figure out a way to find space for the special ed presentations we talked about last meeting?
No, you had asked about that, and I went back to my notes, and I did not see a special ed presentation suggested at the time. I'm hearing it now.
We
And
spoke
my
about
ans-
it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, we spoke about it pretty extensively.
I might have missed it. I did not have it in my notes. We can certainly add it.
I'm not
You know,
making
we
that up,
did-
right, trustees?
We did many, many years ago, look at special ed. I was on the board maybe 5 years ago, Chris. You weren't the assistant director of curriculum at the time, but it was quite a long time ago. And I think we had used an outside service to look
Yes.
at special ed. And I don't think we were really happy with the result that we had gotten. I don't think we liked that report. I mean, I'm going back. I'm not sure if I'm being accurate or not, but
You mean the quality of the report? You're not saying that we didn't like the outcome? You're saying,
we
Yeah.
didn't like the quality of the report, or how it was done and how the investigation was, the analysis, not investigation, the analysis was handled. I don't think we liked the way they approached the topic for analysis.
Yeah, I do recall that. I was a principal at the time, and so as part of the interview process, what I could do, I don't know if it would be helpful, is actually find that that report, put that in the next update. I don't know if that would be good reference in terms of deciding on next steps. Is a comparative basis.
And just to be clear, I've called this a work in progress several times. There's lots of opportunity, and certainly we can find a place for student achievement, closing the gap in the spring, and special education as well, a workshop on special education with the focus to be determined. I'm looking at dates in February and March that don't have topics yet, and I left those blank assuming that there would be things that would develop. And I'm going to go out on a pretty sturdy limb and bet that there's some things we're not even thinking of yet that might develop over the next few months that may need a discussion topic, which is why I left some of them blank. But I will rework this and add both of those and try to find a focal point for the special ed presentation.
We had spoken about it last time in terms of like, you were even saying maybe 2 presentations, one where we were looking from a student, like taking the special ed student from identification to intervention to eventually like transition out of the program. So like from an A to Z approach of everything that takes place with like, what, you know, so the community is better able to understand all the pieces of that. And then Sarah was talking more about like a top-down approach, looking at how special ed was organized as a department.
That does ring a bell.
I thought we were kind of talking about that more as a workshop, the A to Z, but it could be a discussion topic as well. It could be integrated into whatever analysis. If we do we do a meeting where the discussion topic is special ed, but I think it would be good to get that report, Chris, if you can find it, just as a starting point, and then we can determine what we want to do from that report. But I would like the learning loss and the gap closure as part of the discussion, just because of the year and a half, you know, we've had.
I think the board should also talk very explicitly about the schedule for the budget review. So there are 2 meetings. So February 3rd is the superintendent's budget presentation. Then there are 2 meetings labeled budget review, and then we roll into budget adoption. So it is good that we have a budget review, and there's presumably a chance that we still have to make changes, right, to bring it back at the next meeting. I think we've done this a few ways. I'm somewhat worried about getting through all the budget lines in just 2 meetings. And part of me also wants to say maybe we should have an explicit discussion about the revenue side on February 3rd.
Yeah, I was going to agree with that. I think that obviously the budget presentation will discuss key drivers and revenue projections, but I think those things we should be targeting that as the time to do that. And I also think that the long-term potential impacts on our budget has to be a part of that. We have to address the pending LIPA issues and what that will mean for our district. That can't be divorced from them. So I think there are probably some projections that can come along with that revenue that could really be beneficial to us and to the community, and that would inform our decision going forward at the follow-up sessions. So yes, I think that can all be accomplished on the 3rd. That's a good suggestion, Sarah.
Because we do, in this district, maybe more than others, have to make very difficult decisions about how we use revenue sources, right?
Mhm.
All right, I'm distracted by this March 17th date, the High Holy Day, Dr. Dolan. I'm
Don't think for a moment
please.
that I didn't notice that. All right,
There's no guarantee I'm going to be there on March 17th. I'm just
it was-
telling you.
I'm just going to say
We
it was
close our
prob-
office.
It was probably good that I
Manning
didn't
and
know
Russo
that
is not
before we
open for
met,
business.
All right. Yeah, don't think for a minute that I didn't notice that. Well, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so we could probably take a look at that, but not the 18th.
But otherwise, I am interested about how trustees feel about then 2 sessions to get through the lines.
Well, just let me point one thing out. Dave did ask me to confirm that March 24th date is the budget adoption date, which is a little on the early side. If you flip the page over and look at all that we've accomplished, leading up to December, January, and January, there's not a lot of meetings to have prior to the budget adoption. 2 in February, 2.5, 1 in March, because we had that executive session. I guess the point that I'm making is it is condensed. It is very condensed, and
So if you're asking me, I would say I have been thinking about it a lot. I am comfortable with it. It will probably be a little elongated in terms of those meetings, and I wouldn't really think we want to schedule other things on them, which makes it hard to find time for the other things. But I would say that we can also do it in a way that I think is more streamlined. And I've been thinking about this a lot. I think it's important, obviously, for trustees to go through this. It's important for any questions we have to be addressed publicly. But I also think, again, this board does its homework. And so I think we could do a better job of explaining what a section is and letting the questions we have guide where we go, as opposed to page by page and doing it and then asking for questions. So if we explain better the structure of the overall budget section that we're going through and give that overview for the community and for those who are watching, that would then enable us to laser in on what we need to discuss. And if there are things that don't need to be discussed, to not spend time on them to some degree. So I think we can cover it in two, especially if we use the third for revenue and a couple other key issues.
We can do that. I'm not sure the actual announcing of the page turning takes the time so much as like trustees needing to like literally flip through their pages and find where they've made notes.
So I think the suggestion,
questions?
the only other alternative would be putting more on the third. I don't think it's reasonable to ask the administration to have everything ready for a budget presentation by January 20th.
Right, because that's the only alternative.
So I
is to-
think we
is to
we
back
could
it up.
just do some quote unquote easier ones on the third to lighten our load on the other two dates.
specifically things that we can feel fairly certain are not going to change. For example, revenue lines, projections. I think you've given me some stuff to work with, and Olivia and I
Yeah.
will certainly work on that.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Sarah, you good on that topic? Is there other old business?
Did you pick a retreat date?
Sarah has compiled information from us about availabilities. She came with a
Where can
very,
Andrea see? Where's the?
a very good system, and she will scan it and send it to you, and you can be the final piece, and Maria
Oh,
as
beautiful.
well, to let us know what dates will work, and hopefully we can find something. We're still struggling on it.
All right, thank you.
I had a piece, old bit, are we still on old business?
We are an old business.
I just was wondering if we could get an update on outdoor learning. I, from a personal, from my personal standpoint, I think, you know, they're doing a great job again, and classes are outside, and it's wonderful. It's definitely not as robust as it was last year with every special being outside, with reading blocks outside. And I was just wondering if there, you know, is a reason for that, or if there's movement towards that. And I can only speak to elementary school, obviously, so I'm not sure about the other schools. I would love to hear updates about everything.
So that could be something for.
Yeah, let me collect some data and get to the principals. And I also point out that one of our topics very early on is lessons from the pandemic. And that is where Chris and I do plan on, we've started to talk about that one. And one of the lessons is outdoor education. We're going to talk about that, what we've accomplished and what we still hope to accomplish. But I'll try to get you some data from all 5 of the principals.
Good, thanks, Lisa.
It does remind me, the another topic that came up previously was about verifying, in fact, how big or not big our classes are.
I raised that with the Regents classes. And I think it's going to be part of the discussion on,
It's not just. the
but
Regents-
it's not just the
Regents
IB, it's
classes
IB.
By any stretch.
There are AP classes with 30 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really hearing from more the Regents people that their classes were jam-packed.
So we can get some.
We're
new
hearing
class
a lot of
enrollment reports.
anecdotes about at all levels, so.
All right, so let's
We'd rather know the actual
let's
numbers.
congeal this into a question for the administration that we'd like them
I
to
think I
answer
got
for
it.
us.
And at the secondary level, Chris and I could certainly talk to Mr. Contreras and get class sizes for you. I've already asked for the old grid, the copy of the master schedule that I'm so used to looking at, but we could generate a report of class and the number of students in each class. And it will have the level on there, so you'll know.
Are we only looking at secondary? Elementary
Yeah.
is broad, I didn't articulate it well. Is the concern only at the high school?
I've only heard
Is
secondary
there,
concerns.
I've only heard the high school, but I don't know if you're hearing concerns at the middle school, because now it's been restructured from the way it was last year back to the way it was before, but I don't have any sense of how the class sizes at the middle school are either. So I would be actually interested in hearing about that as well, just because I don't know.
Okay, good. Other old business. Other new business.
A couple of things.
Sure.
I think the policy committee should meet. Because I'm really looking forward to that.
Okay, we'll get the policy committee meeting.
And I think, we need, I'm assuming we need to put on an agenda to actually have the discussion we referred to earlier about LAC priorities.
Yes.
So
soon.
like right sooner rather than later to have that conversation. And I have some different ideas about it too. There's a lot going on, but I was recently looking at Superfund sites in the district, and it's unclear to me how some Superfund sites get moved to the point where something actually gets done about them, but I suspect it's a kind of political calculation, considering RXR has managed to get yet another Superfund site remediated, and we have ones in our district. As far as I know, nothing is happening on that are, one is a block away from the Glen Head School. So I think there's probably some different angles of things that we could do, but let's put it on the agenda.
I think the 21st, is the 21st too late? I think at the 7th, we have another report that we're going to be talking about. So I worry about having too much for that date. Is the
I
21st
think
too
it could
late?
be under the committee reports. I don't feel like it honestly usually takes that long. We don't
Okay.
usually have so
The 7th
many
is better
thoughts.
from a time
Is it
perspective for discussing the board's priorities for LAC.
You won't have your members picked by the 7th, will you?
Correct? No.
No, but I think we want, once we have members,
Right,
that's
they
if we
get,
had the
yes,
things,
we've
right?
had this problem in the past, but I didn't know whether you wanted to wait until we till we picked members and asked them what their interests were and what they wanted to work on. I guess it could always be amended.
It's usually,
I know it's board driven because it's a board subcommittee, but we have been fortunate in the past to have people who are active in, in local and state politics who have brought attention to other items as well.
right, absolutely. It's not like once we say we're interested in X, that there can't be more, right? No, good, that's a good.
But I think the feedback we've gotten from LAC has been very clear for the past several years. We need to give them concrete direction and achievable tasks and goals and priorities to be able to achieve. Because I think that there's been a lack of progress for years on that committee, and it needs to be directed so we can get some stuff done that we need done. So I think if we could discuss it on the 7th, bring it to them. I think trustees, we're going to have to, at some point, meet outside of these to interview folks. We have a lot of applications, which is great, for the other committees as well, but it's already getting late, so I don't want to scare anyone off. We need you all here. I think it's a good point, Sarah. I'm glad you brought that up. We need to discuss what LAC is going to do. People are asking.
You're just bringing up that we're going to need to find more dates on my special calendar.
During the week gives us a little more flexibility. The weekends are tough. Okay. Did you have other old business? Sorry, other new business? I had a couple very quick things. We talked about Latin. I just want to get some enrollment numbers for the Latin program. That should be easy, hopefully. I would like to get an update on foils. We have a foil list that has been, and foil information. I just would like to do a little more tangible for us so we understand what's going on there. And frankly, I would like to add, I think for engagement with the public, a process that is huge. And one of our goals this year is the superintendent search. even if we don't have updates for it, I'd like to start adding it as an agenda item. So we can just regularly do that, maybe before the superintendent's report, but probably after the superintendent's report. Not to take away, obviously, the actions of what the current superintendent is doing for us, but I think it's important to update the community on what we're doing, because there are going to be opportunities for the community to, tonight went by, there are going to be opportunities for anyone watching to engage in the process of helping us define the profile of what we're looking for in a superintendent. I hope everyone can look out for those. We want as many people to participate as possible, but the more we highlight that on the agenda, I think the better.
So
Those-
we'll add it
yeah.
under regular business, which is right after the report of the superintendent, before comments from the public. We'll make it a placeholder at all future meetings.
Yeah,
I-
I think we
I
did
think-
it. I think, honestly, think that's what we did
Yeah.
the last time, and I'm
Okay.
sorry.
We did,
Okay,
we did.
Betty and I are making eye contact. I think we know what we're doing. Okay, we got it.
That's all I've got. Any other new business or old business? Okay, I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion?
Jen?
And a second? Great. All in favor of adjournment? Aye. Thank you all. Thank you, Andrea, for making this work.
Oh, thank you.